Chapter 1346. Translator, Nyoibo, Studio Editor. Nyoibo, Studio, who instigated this? Everyone on and off the stage fell silent. Qin Hao had easily sent a 7th-level Venerable Realm Essence soul martial artist flying with a single punch. This made everyone realize that Qin Hao was much stronger than he appeared to be. Kill him. Numerous cultivators made their moves. Numerous silhouettes flew towards Qin Hao, and in that instant, the entire battle stage was filled with fist lights, leg shadows, palm winds, sword chi, and all sorts of other martial skills, aiming to kill Qin Hao. Facing a strong opponent, they prioritized eliminating the strongest first. The cultivators were very smart and reached an agreement. However, some people didn't attack. The attacks were too dense and covered a large area. It was easy to injure others. They didn't know each other well, and it would be a loss if they were ambushed. Qin Hao activated his fire soul, causing flames to soar into the sky. His body entered a state of combustion. His feet stomped on the stage, and an incomparably terrifying wall of fire suddenly rose up in front of him. The attacks that were coming towards him were completely blocked by the wall of fire. At this moment, all martial arts techniques that came into contact with the Red Lotus fire were burned into nothingness. Too weak, Qin Hao made a grabbing motion in the air, and a cultivator who had just stepped into the Emperor realm involuntarily flew toward him, as if he was being sucked in by a python. Qin Hao grabbed him and threw him down without even looking at him. So strong. A 7th-level Venerable Realm cultivator defeated an Emperor Realm cultivator in an instant. Unbelievable. Discussions broke out below the stage. Seeing Qin Hao's strength, many cultivators were glad that they didn't go on stage. Crack! Qin Hao gathered the flame into a whip, which looked like a fiery dragon in his hand. The long whip lashed out and swept out, hitting more than 10 warriors on their chests. Those warriors who were hit by the whip all vomited blood and fell off the stage. Their chests were filled with the smell of barbecued meat. No one could withstand this attack. Qin Hao held back. Otherwise, the people who were hit would have been torn apart or turned to ashes on the spot. Qin Hao is unstoppable on the stage. Get carried away. Break for me. The horse-faced evil monk made his move. Soul power surged in his palm and transformed into a sharp blade. It streaked across the sky and chopped down, cutting the flame whip in half. Seeing this, the burly man rushed over. The muscles on his arms bulged, and an incomparably terrifying fist light bombarded Qin Hao's face. A 1st-level Emperor Realm Origin Soul Cultivator. Qin Hao chuckled softly. No wonder this person was so calm and thought he was invincible. However, although this person's attack was ferocious, it was no match for Emocian. Qin Hao activated the art of indestructible samsara. He didn't need to summon his 2nd soul. His demigod body took a step forward and a flaming fist punched out. Bang! A horrifying sonic boom exploded between the two fists. Several cultivators who were close to the two fists were immediately sent flying. Most of them were at the 8th or 9th level of the Exalt realm, but how could they withstand the aftermath of a battle between Emperor Realm cultivators? This collision had reduced a lot of trouble and actually eliminated more than 20 people. What vigorous strength! The burly man's huge body slid back. The surface of his right fist had cracked open and blood flowed out. There were also specks of sparks lingering around it. He immediately surged his soul power to disperse the sparks. There was no longer any contempt in his eyes. On the contrary, he was very wary of Qin Hao. Brothers, summon your origin souls and cripple this bastard together. A cultivator shouted anxiously. The burly man was a 1st-level Emperor Realm cultivator, but he was defeated by Qin Hao. Moreover, the burly man was an origin soul cultivator. This was simply too terrifying. Buzz, 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 buzz. 7 or 8 rays of soul power bloomed in the battle stage. Intense rays of light shook the stage, and some of the cultivators' appearances changed. They became half human, half beast. Some cultivators condensed origin soul weapons in their hands, while others had the ability to control wind and lightning. These were all their origin souls. Domain, Red Lotus Explosive Flame Blade. Qin Hao was calm and composed. A scarlet halo of light, with him as the center, quickly spread out. Every martial artist that was caught in this halo of light found that they couldn't circulate their origin energy and even lost control of their bodies. It was as if the world had come to a standstill. They were completely imprisoned, unable to move. Even the soul force of the essence soul martial artists was rapidly fading away. What's going on? I can't move. Danger! Amidst a series of hurried shouts, the crowd saw a huge flaming blade appear in Qin Hao's palm. It was more than 60 meters long and spewed out destructive power. Then, the blade fell straight down and cut the battle stage. The stage shook violently, as if the ground had been sunk. Terrifying flames swept out like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves, hitting the cultivators who couldn't move. These cultivators screamed in unison and flew out one by one. They fell off the stage and fell unconscious. However, the battle stage was unscathed. There wasn't even a trace left behind, which surprised Qin Hao. Don't hold back. This kid is evil. The horse-faced evil monk's eyes were filled with horror. After Qin Hao's move, more than 30 people were sent flying, including 7 or 8 origin soul cultivators. The yuan qi of more than 30 people was suppressed by Qin Hao alone. Even their soul power couldn't penetrate his confinement power. It was too terrifying. Absorb the soul into the body. The burly man roared as a beam of light shot out from his back, transforming into the silhouette of a gigantic ape. The gigantic ape and the burly man merged into one. The man's appearance underwent a drastic change as he transformed into the form of an ape. His body grew taller, reaching a height of nearly 8 meters. He stood on the 100 Battles platform like a small hill, pounding his chest with both hands, looking extremely majestic. Absorb the soul into the body. The horse-faced, evil monk shouted at the same time. He entered the beast state and turned into a beehive-waisted mantis. His hands disappeared and were replaced by a pair of mantis blades. Let me give you some medicine first. The sexy woman attacked for the first time. Her face suddenly became ferocious like a ghost. Her long hair fluttered in the wind. She spat out a cloud of yellow smoke at Qin Hao, drowning him in the yellow smoke. At this moment, the battle stage fell into a short silence. Everyone was panting wildly. No one expected that they would experience such a fierce battle as soon as they got on the stage. 100 people surrounded one person. Not only did they not succeed, but Qin Hao attacked 3 times. Only the horse-faced monk, the giant ape, and the sexy woman were left on the stage. In addition, there were 5 people who were scared out of their wits. They huddled together and trembled. It was obvious that they had lost their will to fight. Why is there no movement? The evil monk who turned into a mantis swordsman said. He stared at the thick yellow smoke in front of him. He didn't dare to go forward to investigate. He knew very well how powerful the sexy woman's poison was. Could it be that my poison knocked them out? The sexy woman wondered. She was a little happy, but she remained vigilant and didn't dare to let her guard down. Roar! The giant ape stretched out his hands and grabbed the 5 martial artists who were scared out of their wits. He threw them into the yellow smoke. In the next second, there was a ghost-like scream of pain. The scream only lasted for a few seconds before it disappeared. It seems that the kid was really poisoned to death by me. The sexy woman raised her head and looked at the giant ape. Her face rippled with a charming smile. Ha ha! Second Mother is amazing. We can go back and claim our reward. The evil monk raised his head and laughed. His laughter was sharp and ear-piercing. Dong! A footstep sounded in the yellow smoke. Dong! The second sound. Dong! The third sound. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1347. Not allowed on the stage, it was as if someone was stepping on their hearts. Every time it rang out, they felt suffocated. It was extremely uncomfortable. Boom! As the 4th sound rang out, a flame shot into the sky from the rolling yellow smoke like a fiery bird. He's not dead, the evil mantis monk screamed. How is this possible? The sexy woman panicked. Her poison powder could easily take down a second-level Emperor rank cultivator, but it had no effect on Qin Hao. Qin Hao's aura was still as strong as ever, and his soul power hadn't weakened in the slightest. Roar! The giant ape roared. Flames flew towards him like falling sparks, and the heat seemed to want to burn him to a crisp. He threw a punch straight at the giant ape, and a powerful force swept through the air, creating a storm. I don't have time to play with you. Qin Hao's entire body blazed with flames as dragon scales crawled up his arms. Boundless energy gathered in his fists as he unleashed both of his souls. His fists collided with the windstorm, tearing it apart. He punched through the windstorm and once again clashed with the giant ape. Suddenly, an incomparably terrifying tearing force hit the giant ape's fist, and his fist exploded. The giant ape didn't have time to scream. He desperately used all of his soul power to resist, but the tearing force was too fierce. It didn't seem like it could be possessed by a mortal. It tore through his arm until it was swallowed whole. Die! Qin Hao reached out with his left hand and pressed it against the giant ape's head. The Qin family's crushing palm was terrifying. His crushing palm was comparable to a 5th-level Emperor Realm cultivator, and it swept through the giant ape's head with the Scarlet Lotus fire. Boom! There was an explosion. The giant ape's 8-meter-tall body shattered into pieces. The flames burned through it, and not a single part of its body was left. A 1st-level Origin Soul Emperor dead. Mount Tai, the sexy woman shouted hoarsely. Her face became even more sinister as countless vines covered in hook-shaped barbs rose from her back. They flickered with a green light and were extremely poisonous. The vines twisted like poisonous snakes and wrapped around Qin Hao's body in the blink of an eye, tightly binding him in the air. Grandpama, why don't you send him to hell? The sexy woman screamed at the top of her lungs. Her man was dead, and not even his bones were left. Mantis' hand opened belly knife. The Mantis evil monk's eyes were bloodshot. His skinny body shot up like a spring. The Mantis sabers he swung seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth. Endless soul power poured into the twin sabers. Taking advantage of the fact that Qin Hao was being restrained, he slashed down crazily at his head. Clang! A fierce flame exploded above Qin Hao's head. Following that, the pair of Mantis blades exploded. You dare to come out and make a fool of yourself? Qin Hao said quietly. The evil monk looked as if he had seen a ghost. He let out a shrill cry that only a woman could make. He saw that Qin Hao's face was covered in dragon scales. The scales flickered with light and looked extremely evil. Those eyes were scarlet red. Not only did his dual sabers fail to split open the other party's head, it was even shattered. What a terrifying defense. Even a 1st-level Emperor Realm cultivator couldn't break through it after absorbing his soul into his body. Pucci! A sharp ray of light pierced through the evil monk's abdomen and pierced his dantian. Blood splattered everywhere. The evil monk's soul power dissipated abruptly. He reverted to his original bald appearance and fell powerlessly from the sky. You should come with me. Qin Hao stretched out his hand. He didn't avoid the green thorns on the vines at all. His flesh seemed to have turned into hard steel as he grabbed the vines and lifted them into the air. The sexy woman was thrown into the air. She struggled with all her might, but to no avail. She realized that her strength was insignificant compared to her opponent's. The man whose face was covered in scales and whose body was ablaze with flames was a monster. Boom! A beam of scarlet flames pierced the sky and tore apart the sexy woman's body. As the flames disappeared, so did the woman. Qin Hao's body trembled. His cold eyes showed that he was uninterested in the battle arena. He quietly floated down and landed next to the evil monk. The golden finger had penetrated the evil monk's dantian and crippled his cultivation, but he wasn't dead. Who sent you here? Qin Hao asked coldly as he dispersed the soul fire. The winner takes all. Benefactor, please release this poor monk. The evil monk closed his eyes, seeking release. He had failed his mission. Even if Qin Hao let him go, the person behind him wouldn't spare his life. Tell me, and I'll let you transcend without any pain. Qin Hao bent down. Okay, I'll speak. The evil monk struggled to get up. He tried his best to get closer to Qin Hao and open his mouth. At this moment, a ray of light shot out from his mouth. It was impossible to dodge. With a pucci, it pierced Qin Hao's forehead. "Ha ha! You are indeed powerful. However, you were still killed by this poor monk's spirit-severing needle. Although the three of us died, it was worth it to drag a monster like you down with us." The evil monk laughed heartily. His hidden weapon had taken the lives of countless powerhouses. Qin Hao was no exception. After all, it was a venerable weapon with the sexy woman's poison on it. Qin Hao pulled out the silver needle from his forehead and stabbed it into the evil monk's forehead. Stubborn. How? How is this possible? How? The evil monk's huge eyes widened. His frightened and weak voice gradually disappeared as his flesh turned into pus and blood. At such a close distance, his top-grade venerable weapon spirit-severing needle couldn't kill the target. What kind of monster was this? Qin Hao didn't look at the thick water on the ground again. In fact, even if the evil monk didn't say anything, he could guess who sent these three guys. After all, when they fought just now, there were 5 Essence Soul Realm cultivators hidden among the 100 cultivators. Those cultivators were all at the peak of the Venerable Realm and had gravity source spirit fluctuations on them. Unfortunately, they were imprisoned by the domain. They didn't even have the chance to activate their source spirits before they were killed by Qin Hao on the spot. Xianyuan Wuba. Qin Hao's mouth curved. On the first day of the Divine Palace's omen, they sent such a luxurious lineup. 3 First-Order Essence Soul Realm cultivators and 5 of their own clansmen. Unfortunately, it didn't succeed. On the contrary, Qin Hao saw the decline of the Xianyuan family. They didn't even have a higher Emperor Realm cultivator. They sent 3 outsiders to assassinate him. Perhaps they were restricted by the rules of the battle platform. After all, Emperor Realm cultivators above the age of 30 couldn't fight on the platform. But it was enough to see that after the battle in Feng City, among the younger generation of the Xianyuan family, there was basically no one who could threaten Qin Hao. Otherwise, Xianyuan Wuba would never send the evil monk and the other 2. The younger generation of the Xianyuan family had withered. Maybe it's just a test. Tengdu, Changalo, what tricks will you play behind my back? Qin Hao thought. Today's game was just the beginning. After stepping on the divine path, he would face more ambushes. Buzz. At this time, a ray of light rushed out from the battle's steel. There was no dangerous aura. It flew to Qin Hao and fell into his palm. Qin Hao bowed his head. Divine Palace Order. Congratulations on getting the first Omen qualification in Feng City. Zhou Wudao congratulated him on the platform. What does it have to do with you? Qin Hao put away the Divine Palace Order. There was a mystery hidden in the order. Now is not the time to explore it. He then said, "But I have a favor to ask of you." Zhou Wudao was stunned. He was quite angry at first. How did Qin Hao's attitude become so good in the blink of an eye? He even asked him for a favor? How rare. Speak. You're not allowed to go on the platform today. Otherwise, I'll see you on the divine path. Qin Hao said coldly. He stepped into the void and stepped into the air. At the same time, a huge beast flew from afar. Its fleshy wings flapped, and the wind whistled. It carried Qin Hao and disappeared into the horizon. Guadi, it's time for you to perform. It's good to have Big Brother. Xiao proudly raised its head at Zhou Wudao, as if to say, "Come on stage and beat me if you can." Zhou Wudao gritted his teeth and looked in the direction where Qin Hao disappeared. He was so angry that his whole body trembled. Xiang Mo pretended not to see and ran to Zheng Qingqi's side. He knew that old Zhou would not be able to make a comeback, and he had no hope. He would never have the fantasy of beating Qin Hao again in this life. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1348. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Destination. Di Luo Bay in the blue sky. A beast shadow emerged from the clouds. It had a pair of wings on its back and was extremely fast. It broke the sound barrier and disappeared into the sky along the crooked South River. On the back of the beast shadow stood a tall young man. His white hair fluttered in the wind. The scene of the fierce battle just now appeared in his mind. 3 first-stage Essence Soul Emperors and 5 members of the Xianyuan clan. Xianyuan Wuba wanted to break Qin Hao's path to becoming a god, but he was killed instead. The giant ape, the sexy woman, and the mantis monk were all strong. However, Qin Hao had a demigod body and was immune to all poisons. He had cultivated the immortal samsara art, and his body was unparalleled. No matter how strong the 3 of them were, they were no match for Qin Hao. Their ultimate moves were useless. How could they not lose? Qin Hao had broken through to the 7th level of the Venerable Realm. With the help of the immortal samsara art, he was able to suppress first-stage emperors. After activating the first soul, he relied on the rich combat experience and skills accumulated in his previous life to completely toy with the 3 opponents. After activating the dragon's soul, he instantly crushed them. Not to mention that Qin Hao also used the power of laws when he killed the giant ape. Under the power of laws, even the will of the emperor was ineffective. The giant ape was unlucky. How could a mere mortal compete with the power of a god? He was simply courting death. My power of laws has only reached the 4th level, but it was so easy to kill a first-stage Essence Soul Emperor. It's hard to imagine how terrifying it will be when the laws are perfected. Qin Hao thought. His face was full of despair as he recalled the scene of the giant ape trying his best to resist the power of laws. He saw his body being torn apart and swallowed by the terrible power with his own eyes. That feeling of struggle was more terrifying than directly killing him. This was the power of a god. Qin Hao even suspected that if he were to encounter a real god, with his current demigod body, he would not be able to withstand a blow from the other party. Putting aside the terrible thoughts, Qin Hao attacked with the power of laws. A huge crack suddenly appeared in the space in front of him, and the dog's beast body disappeared into it. In Feng City, he had won the first place to be selected. He did not follow the instructions of the Divine Palace decree and directly stepped onto the god's path. All the martial artists in the god's path were like him. They had gone through the cruel battles in the 100-battle arena and were 1 in 100. All of them had astonishing strength. No matter how arrogant Qin Hao was, he was not so arrogant as to face all the competitors alone. He needed to wait for Xiaogua and Zheng Qingqi to qualify, as well as Xiao Han. Xiao Han had yet to recover. In her current condition, there was no way she could win in the battle arena. Even surviving would be a problem. However, Qin Hao wasn't worried. Xiao had become an emperor and refined the divine peacock's blood. Her bloodline had been refined. Strictly speaking, Kair was Xiao Han's battle pet. The 2 were one. As long as Kair accompanied Xiao Han onto the stage, the winner would be Xiao Han. A divine palace order was enough for the 2 of them to embark on the path to God. This was consistent with the relationship between Qin Hao and the dog spirit. Qin Hao had won the qualification to be selected and stepped onto the god's path. Naturally, the dog spirit could be brought in. Qin Hao had come to the end of the South River for a more important purpose. He wanted to see Li Wanji. Li Wanji was seriously injured and was hanging on by his emperor's qi. He felt that nowhere was safe. The murderer of Ning Cangsong had left a serious psychological shadow on Li Wanji. He had always felt that the person was looking for him and wanted to get rid of him. Therefore, he hid in the Hidden Dragon Mystery Realm. Li Wanji had refined the Hidden Dragon Mystery Realm and completely taken over it. He was the master of the Mystery Realm. Even if he was seriously injured, he still had some magical powers to use. However, his cultivation was still low and he could not move the Mystery Realm. Qin Hao came to the end of the South River to look for him. When he left the Mystery Realm with Qing Lao that day, Li Wanji left a message. Once the Divine Palace opened and Qin Hao obtained the qualification to be selected, he would come back immediately. Li Wanji had a big secret to tell him. Feng City. After Qin Hao left, the huge battle platform fell into a brief silence. This battle had a huge impact on the martialists. Qin Hao's strength had overturned their understanding and caused quite a stir. A Yuan Venerate had crushed 3 Emperor Realm martialists in one fell swoop. Secondly, This method of obtaining the qualification to be selected was too dangerous and bloody. There were no rules to speak of. Regardless of life and death, any method could be used as long as one was on the platform. Sex selection or competition usually had some rules and restrictions. However, the Divine Palace election was simply inhumane. Human lives were treated like pigs and dogs. No matter how strong one's cultivation was, they would die at the drop of a hat. They simply did not care about the hardships of a martialist cultivation. Many people were treated. However, even more people were determined. After all, this was a path that led to becoming a god. The battle platform was the direction of the divine path. After obtaining the qualification to be selected and becoming a disciple of the Divine Palace, the weakest one would be a great emperor. How could martialists not feel relaxed and happy when they could walk unhindered across the entire continent? Opportunity and danger coexisted. The greater the danger, the greater the achievement. In the second round, obeyed Qin Hao's instructions and went on stage with Xiao Han. According to Qin Hao's analysis, would obtain the qualification to be selected as long as she did not encounter an extremely strong entity like Zhou Wudao. Before Qin Hao left, he had threatened Zhou Wudao. Zhou Wudao naturally did not dare offend and Xiaogua. If he did not step onto the divine path, he would be the first to be dealt with and would definitely not be able to successfully walk out of it. Furthermore, this prince of the great Zhou dynasty was arrogant and would not take advantage of Qin Hao's absence to deliberately bully his woman. However, when he saw Xiao Han's empty eyes again, Zhou Wudao was shocked and his heart sank. Once upon a time, Princess Jingwei, who had sat beside Xiao Wudi, had been so radiant and dazzling like a goddess from the nine heavens. In this round, Kara did not encounter any strong obstacles. In fact, it was very smooth, so smooth that it exceeded Qin Hao's expectations. Qin Hao had fought too fiercely in the opening battle, causing many Emperor realm martial artists below the stage to feel a strong sense of fear. Therefore, in the second round, there were no outstanding geniuses on stage. Instead, some fearless venerable realm martial artists went on stage with their noses held high. In the end, when released her Emperor Realm aura and the phantom of the divine peacock appeared behind her, a large group of venerable realm martial artists were immediately scared out of their wits and voluntarily forfeited the stage. Forfeiting was better than being killed. However, there were pros and cons. In the third round, Xiaogua went on stage and encountered great trouble. Among his opponents, there were actually several hidden ancient clan geniuses who had come from afar. One of them was an Emperor realm martial artist who had a primordial spirit and was very strong. Xiaogua was completely powerless in front of this person and was pressed to the ground. While the spectators watching Zhang Wu below the stage were trembling in fear, Zheng Qingqi could not bear to see Xiaogua give up. However, he revealed his greatest trump card and used the Taurus Palace battle robe. Perhaps it was because he was lucky and had been tempered by Qin Hao for a long time, but Xiaogua, who had been unable to break through all this time, suddenly ascended to the 8th level Yuan Venerate during the battle. He made a comeback and defeated his opponent in one fell swoop to obtain the third token. Zheng Qingqi heaved a sigh of relief. Although he had won this battle, it had been an extremely difficult victory. Xiaogua had almost lost his life. After winning, he had fainted on the stage. On the 100 battle platform of the Divine Palace, the selection of 1 in 100 was in full swing, not only in Feng City, but also in the entire southern region. If one were to look down from the sky, they would see countless densely packed black dots in every corner of the southern region. These black dots were the crowds, and the places that attracted the crowds were the battle platforms. 5 days later, Zheng Qingqi, Zhou Wudao, and a small number of Knight Luo Palace disciples had also obtained tokens. On this day, Qin Hao rushed back from the source of the southern river. Everyone had gathered in the small courtyard of the bamboo forest. The atmosphere was very depressing. Looking at Qin Hao below the stone pavilion, who was combing Xiao Han's hair, Zheng Qingqi finally couldn't help but say, The Sacred Palace has ordered all the candidates to gather at Fallen Emperor Bay within 2 months. What do you think? Fallen Emperor Bay was a forbidden land of death in the southern region. It was located at the end of the inland sea. It was a strange place where martialists could not use their essence, energy, or primordial spirits. A few months ago, several almighties of Emperor Yuan had died, and Li Wanji had fled in panic. What was even more shocking was that the current patriarch of the Ning family, Ning Songsong, had died in the Fallen Emperor Bay's blood river. 9 Heavens Divine Sovereign. Chapter 1349. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations taking the waterway Fallen Emperor Bay, an ominous place in the southern region. If the Divine Palace's 100 battle platform was a 1 in 100 competition that made warriors experience cruelty and blood, then Fallen Emperor Bay was the call of the death god. Qin Hao combed Xiaohan's hair with a calm expression. He was gentle and meticulous. Zheng Qingqi's words were of no concern to him. Big brother. Xiaogua, who was lying on a simple bamboo bed, called out softly. His right arm was wrapped in bandages and hung around his neck. Under the white cloth wrapped around his upper body, a thin layer of blood seeped out. His brows were full of worry, and his voice was unsteady. Qin Hao's eyelashes fluttered, and then he lowered his head to look at the crowd. In the courtyard, Yi Ninghong, Senior Ing, the old demon, and several elders of Nightnet Palace were present. On the Zheng clan side, Duanmu Qingwei, Xiangbu, Zheng Qingqi's father, big brother, and even his grandfather were all present. In addition, there were several Zheng clan warriors who had obtained the qualification to sign, as well as disciples of Nightnet Palace. This group of people in the courtyard included the upper echelons of the Zheng dynasty and the future of the empire. However, Zhou Wudao's appearance surprised Qin Hao. He and the 7th ancestor of the Zhou clan were also present. Isn't it just a gathering place? What's the fuss? Zhou Wudao smiled and glanced at Zheng Qingqi. For better or worse, he had entered the top 10 of the Imperial Martial Competition. What a coward. A few months ago, a 9-star great emperor of the southern region died at the gathering place you mentioned, Qin Hao said softly. Zhou Wudao's body trembled, and his smile froze on his face. The 7th ancestor of the Zhou clan was like a tiger whose tail had been stepped on. He suddenly stood up, and great shock flashed in his eyes. Qing Lao, what do you think? Qin Hao asked Duanmu Qingwei. Duanmu Qingwei walked back and forth in front of everyone with his hands behind his back. The name of the fallen Emperor Bei had been infamous for a long time and was abnormally terrifying. However, he was not too nervous. His old voice slowly analyzed. The fact that the Shun Palace is directing the omens to gather at the fallen Emperor Bei proves that this place is under their control. Putting aside the personal competition between the omens, there should be no problem. Let's not talk about who the terrifying person who killed Ning Songsong was. Let's not talk about whether this person was still lingering around the fallen Emperor Bei. There was no doubt that the South Pole Divine Palace was the pinnacle of martial arts in the continent. There is absolutely no force or individual that could rival it. The opening of the Divine Palace was a once-in-a-lifetime event. What they wanted were disciples, the ones with the greatest potential on the continent, the geniuses who had the potential to reach the divine realm, not a pile of corpses. Since they had chosen Emperor Bei as the gathering point, they had naturally considered the safety of the envoys. In that case, the terrifying person who had killed Ning Songsong was no longer a threat. If he dared attack the Omen Protector, he would have to die. However, this did not mean that there was no danger. On the contrary, when all the omens gathered together, the greatest danger had just begun. What you mean is that the danger is not the terrifying person, but the omens themselves, the old demon said at the right time. On the surface, that is the case. Qing Lao nodded. Immediately, the elders in the courtyard heaved a sigh of relief. If Duanmu Qinghui's judgment was correct, then there was nothing to worry about. The elders knew how strong Qin Hao's group of juniors were. Granny Ing and the others had absolute confidence that they could break through the encirclement and stand out. Moreover, after the gathering, Shou Wuk of the Sword Sect, as well as the people of the Arhut Temple and the others, would meet up with Qin Hao. The strength of the three sects and one emperor of the southern region would be consolidated. When a strong joined forces, how powerful would that be? Unless they were surrounded by all the omens. Otherwise, no force would be able to shake Qin Hao's group of geniuses. Even the Xianyuan clan and the Blazing Sun Temple could not. Do the elders have any objections? Qin Hao laughed softly. Previously, he was indeed afraid of Emperor Bei, especially after Li Wanji's accident. But the god's path had to be challenged. Challenging the god's path, entering the emperor realm, exterminating the Xianyuan clan, and saving Lin Feng and Li Wanji. There was no room for discussion. No matter how terrifying Emperor Bei was, it was blocking the god's path. No matter what, it had to be broken. Qin Hao had even seen the East Continent's god burial valley. No matter how terrifying Emperor Bei was, could it be more terrifying than the god burial valley? I agree. Yining Hong was the first to speak. Hong Hong. The old demon was still not at ease. This time, he could not accompany Qin Hao by his side. His lifespan was too long. Shut up. Yining Hong glared at the old demon. Dendi of the East Continent had once stood at the peak of martial arts. He was a god in the hearts of all alchemists. No matter what, she would not allow the old demon to make a fuss. She said, I will take out all the treasures that Master left behind and let the disciples bring them over. I also agree. Granny Ying stood up. She looked at Yining Hong as though she was looking at her own child. There was no reason for her not to support her. Similarly, it was the Night Demon Emperor's wish to strengthen the Night Luo Palace. Since the two seniors have spoken, I have nothing else to say. Qingqi, you must protect yourself. Zheng Qingqi's father said sincerely. Little brother, forgive me for not being able to go with you. Zheng Qingshan walked in front of Zheng Qingqi helplessly. Zheng Qingqi smiled faintly and punched his brother's chest. What about you guys? Qin Hao looked at the Zheng tribe warriors who had obtained the qualification to sign up. We are willing to follow Second Highness and Pavilion Master through fire. The 5 strong youths knelt down and shouted hot-bloodedly. We are willing to follow Pavilion Master through fire. At the side, the 6 Night Luo Palace girls said. Out of the 6 girls, one of them stood out. She did not speak. However, her eyes were equally determined. All right, we will set off tomorrow. We will advance along the coast. Everyone, go back and prepare. Qin Hao nodded at everyone. His gaze landed on the girl who did not speak previously. His eyes were filled with admiration. This girl was not simple. Her aura was very strong, although it was not clear who was stronger between her and Zhou Wudao. However, Palace Master Yi had said in private that this girl's cultivation was not much weaker than Shouwuk's. After all, she was Yi Ninghong's disciple and could be considered half a daughter. In the Battle of Feng City, other than Qin Hao, she had killed the most people. Everyone went to prepare in advance. Although fallen Emperor Bei was scary, it could not scare the hot-blooded youths. Young people had to fight and dare to compete with the heavens. If they were afraid, they would not fight on the 100 battle platform and would not choose 1 in 100 to obtain the qualification to sign up. A 100% mortality rate. Their predecessors could not do it, but it did not mean that they could not do it. They wanted to try and leave behind glory for the future generations to worship. However, facing fallen Emperor Bei, no one let down their guard. This time, not only did they have to bring artifacts, pills, and other necessities, even their lives were on the line. If they did not return, the Zheng dynasty's image was a huge dragon lying on the beach. Many areas bordered the South Sea. To reach fallen Emperor Bei, one had to cross the inland sea. The inland sea of the South Sea was hidden in the northwest corner of the continent. As they had obtained the qualification to sign earlier, Qin Hao's group had more than enough time. However, within 2 months, they had to cross the inland sea and reach fallen Emperor Bei. No one knew what would happen along the way. The Divine Palace had instructed that no one was allowed to be escorted by their seniors. If they did not, they would have to bear the consequences. As such, Qin Hao's group did not dare to waste time. Taking the water route was the fastest route. The next day, A Zheng dynasty military warship docked at Eagle Head Harbor in advance, waiting for the arrival of its master. Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1350. Translator. Hinyi Translations Editor. Hinyi Translations on the path to God the Eagle Head Harbor was filled with Zheng clan soldiers. The entire harbor was completely sealed off. However, the space above the harbor was disturbed by an external force. Space twisted and a strong wind howled, blowing sand and gravel into the air. Then, a bolt of black lightning fell from the sky like a giant python. A group of people stood on the beach. "Be careful. Wait for the emperors to return," Palace Lord Yi said as he looked at Yi. Palace Lord Yi said as he watched them leave. He did not say much. This sentence represented the thoughts of all the elders. Everyone nodded and boarded the ship one by one. Qin Hao was the last to step onto the deck. Two warriors from the Zheng tribe, who followed him, pulled the heavy wooden planks back onto the ship. The island-like warship slowly moved forward in front of tens of thousands of soldiers. "Master Gu, sorry to trouble you," Qin Hao shouted from the stern of the ship. He stood with his hands behind his back. "The weapons I make are the best in the entire southern region. No, the best in the world. If you die, I'll sell them to someone else." Master Gu blew his beard and roared at the warship. Although his words weren't pleasant, they couldn't hide his concern. "I'll definitely return." Qin Hao laughed loudly. The sound of the waves was suppressed. It was as if this laughter was the only sound left on the vast South Sea. How could he die before taking revenge for Shaohan? When he returned, the Xinyuan family would be destroyed. Not only would they be destroyed, but they would be wiped clean. He would use the most profound method to make them pay the price. Before leaving, Qin Hao had thought about it. He would have Master Gu make a refining furnace. Its function would be the same as the refining flask that the old demon had sealed, but its capacity would be greater. Qin Hao had used the refining flask to refine 3 million people from the Yuan family. When he returned, he would refine the entire Xinyuan family and let Xinyuan Wuying witness the taste of her family being refined to death. The warship left and disappeared into the northern horizon. The tens of thousands of people at the Eagle Head Harbor didn't leave. They were like statues, still looking there. Qing Lao silently took out a piece of paper and slowly opened it. Qin Hao had left the paper. He said that Duanmu Qing Wei could only read it after he left. At this moment, it was time to open it. The slip of paper unfurled. Duanmu Qing Wei lowered his head, and his gaze fell upon it. He saw a question left behind by the brush on the white slip of paper. What is the strongest pill? Duanmu Qing Hui's pupils suddenly contracted. His body trembled. Looking in the direction Qin Hao had left, he asked, "What is the strongest, Dan?" In the endless southern region, there were countless ships moving forward. They were like a group of ants, moving in the same direction. Among the countless ships, a battleship that had departed from Eagle Head Harbor was particularly eye-catching. This ship was too big and looked incomparably sturdy. The bow, stern, and wings of the ship had black cannons protruding out. The cannons had a faint halo of terrifying light, which gave people a strong sense of invasion. Clearly, this was a powerful military warship. At this moment, Qin Hao was still standing at the stern of the ship. He looked in the direction where Eagle Head Harbor had disappeared, and the corners of his mouth curved upwards. What's the strongest pill? There's no such thing as the strongest pill. There are only stronger alchemists. Shaking his head, he hoped that Duanmu Qing Wei would not be confused by the question. Once he broke through the barrier, he would truly be at Denda's level. Of course, it was not so easy to become the emperor of the pill world. There was no strongest pill in the world, only stronger alchemists. Once they broke through this boundary, they would give birth to their own Tao. The Tao of Emperor was different from the Tao that martial artists slowly comprehended. The Tao of Emperor had a Tao calamity. After experiencing the baptism of the Tao calamity, one's Tao heart would be wuck. Only then could one become emperor. Otherwise, one would be destroyed by the Tao calamity. Otherwise, Emperor Realm alchemists would not be so rare. Many people with hopes of becoming emperor did not take the final step and died under the Tao calamity. Qin Hao's trip to Imperial Descent Bay was dangerous. Duanmu Qinghui's Dao Calamity was also the gates of hell. I hope that when we return, you and I will both be there. At that time, we can truly sit together and we will not be lonely. Qin Hao smiled slightly. He also hoped that the pill world would produce another emperor. Turning around, Qin Hao returned to the bow of the ship. His gaze inadvertently swept across a figure. Zhou Wudao. Qin Hao did not say anything. He did not want to talk to him. He did not understand. Yesterday, when everyone decided to set off, Zhou Wudao actually requested to travel with them. Zhou Wudao was truly very strong. If he did not use the Crimson Arrow, Qin Hao did not have the confidence to defeat him. With Zhou Wudao's abilities, there was really no need for him to travel with Qin Hao. After all, it was more suitable for him to find Murong Zijuan. The great Zhou Empire and Northern Yin had already established a heavenly pact. But this guy seemed to be sticking to the Zheng tribe. Regarding this, Qin Hao did not agree. Of course, he did not reject him directly. No matter what, Zhou Wudao was very strong. Since he was shamelessly following them, then let him follow. If they met other expedition masters along the way, Zhou Wudao naturally would not stand by and watch. If he did not, he would die in the sea. Why would he chase away a free fighter? The vital energy of the warship surged. A powerful force spewed out from the stern of the ship, pushing out waves of white waves. Its speed suddenly increased, like a sea dragon advancing in the South Sea. Just as Qin Hao and the rest set off, Sword Sect, Arhut Palace. Similarly, two giant void warships rose from within the sect. With a loud roar, they charged towards the northwest. Shou Wuk and Luo Yuliang also led their people and set off. However, unlike Qin Hao, they took the air route, while Qin Hao took the water route. Furthermore, the structure of the void warships of the Sword Sect and Arhut Palace was different from the Zheng tribe's ship. It was hollow inside, lighter and more agile, like a wooden bird, suitable for air travel. Although the three parties took different routes, their destination was the same, the southern inland sea. At the same time, an even larger and more powerful void warship covered in golden light set off in front of the Ningwu Empire's imperial palace. A group of incomparably noble people stepped out of the palace, but the person in the lead was not Ning Tianxing. Next to Ning Tianxing was Mo Xian, who was dressed in black and had shoulder-length black hair. He coldly strode forward. Behind Ning Tianxing were Ning, Chaofan, and many young experts of the Ning family's third branch. Behind Mo Xian were the flirtatious Liu Bingyan, Zhong Ans, and Gu Kuei, the three devil generals of the Devil Luo Kingdom. As for these people, they were willing to serve as foils. They all obediently walked behind a young man in green. This young man in green had sharp eyebrows and a jade-like face. His facial features were breathtakingly beautiful. There was a mole under his right eye, and not a single blemish could be found on his face. Although he was dressed in men's clothing, his face was so beautiful that even women would be jealous of it. He gave off a cold and arrogant aura that made him unapproachable. As he walked, it was as if he was the only one in the world, like a celestial emperor surrounded by the many geniuses behind him. He gave off an aura of looking down on the world. This aura made Great Emperor Ningwu, who was standing on the city gate tower, pale in comparison. Although Great Emperor Ningwu, who had once defeated Ning Lengjue and became the new ruler of Ningwu, was sending off the group with his head lowered, he gave off the illusion that he was looking up at the beautiful young man in front of the group. Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1351. Translator, Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo Studio, the Pavilion Master sent us here. The group moved forward slowly in an orderly manner. Ning Tianxing and Mo Xian maintained a 1 meter distance behind the handsome young man. They didn't dare to cross the line. Just as they were about to board the ship, a commotion could be heard from afar. It seemed like someone was having a conflict with the Imperial Guards. People were shouting, "I want to see the prince." The handsome young man stopped and looked at Ning Tianxing with his emotionless, beautiful eyes. "What's the commotion?" Ning Tianqing took a few steps forward and avoided the handsome young man carefully. He looked over and saw a group of Pill Hall's alchemists in white robes trying to break through the Imperial Guard's blockade. Crown Prince, these people want to see you no matter what, an Imperial Guard shouted as he tried his best to stop them. With the Pill Hall's popularity, the South region's alchemists had entered their golden age. If it wasn't for this, the Imperial Guards would have killed these bold alchemists on the spot. Today was a good day for Ning Tianqing to set off. Moreover, there were important people from the East Continent present. Let them come over, Ning Tianqing said. Why would a group of alchemists come to find him at this time? The Imperial Guards accepted the order and let them pass. Along with the sound of hurried footsteps, 7 to 8 white-robed alchemists stood in front of Ning Tianqing. Crown Prince, the leader said. He was very tall and muscular. He had a rough face and didn't have the elegance of an alchemist. What's the matter? Ning Tianqing observed this person. This person emitted a rough aura. His robe was twisted and slanted as if it was put on at the last minute. It wasn't just this person. The 7 to 8 alchemists in front of him were all dressed like this. It was very strange. Normally, a qualified alchemist would pay attention to their appearance. Your Highness, we are from the Zheng dynasty. We belong to Dangu, the rough man said with a smile. Qin Hao's people. Ning Tianqing was a little surprised. Then, he calmed down and asked, He has something for you to tell me? Since he was sent by Qin Hao, he must have something important to tell him. Yes, Your Highness. Our great pavilion master said that the Mo Luo kingdom is sinister and cunning. None of them are good people. It's best if you don't associate yourself with them. The boorish man raised his nose and raised his voice. Then he looked at Mo Xian, the corners of his mouth curled up, and his attitude was ostentatious. Mo Xian frowned. What nonsense are you talking about? Gu Kuei's hair stood on end, and he let out a roar. If Zhong Ens hadn't held him back, he would have run over and torn the speaker's mouth apart. Could it be that I'm wrong? In Feng City, you've trespassed into other people's residences. You're rude and unreasonable, and you think too highly of yourselves. My pavilion master is here in person, but you're still putting on airs and playing the zither. You're just like a bunch of clowns. You have no self-awareness. Creak. Mo Xian secretly clenched his fists. Feng City, the place that humiliated him. That day, he had lost all his dignity. He was played around with, humiliated, and forced to kneel down and apologize. I'll kill you, you piece of shit, Gu Kuei roared. His huge body jumped around like a tiger that was about to break free. Zhong Ens couldn't stop him. All right, I know who I'm with. Go back and tell your pavilion master that he doesn't need to worry about me. Ning Tianqing became colder. He had spent a lot of effort to build a relationship with that person in the East Continent. He didn't want to ruin his relationship with that person just because Qin Hao sent someone to say a few words. Moreover, he didn't need Qin Hao to tell him what to do. Ning Tianqing was a little disappointed. Qin Hao is usually a steady person. Why did he send a group of people to stir up trouble? Ning Wu and the Zheng dynasty were allies, and Qin Hao was a good person. Ning Tianqing waved his hand and asked Dan Ji's people to leave. If this group of people didn't leave, something bad would happen. Your Highness, are you not going to listen to our pavilion master? The rough man asked. Ning Tianqing was stunned. His eyes suddenly became sharp, and the temperature around him began to drop. He said coldly, Get lost. You. The rough man didn't expect Ning Tianqing to treat him like this. He pointed at Ning Tianqing and said, Well, our pavilion master is Ning Wu's great benefactor. Without our pavilion master, would you be able to sit on the crown prince's throne? Now that you don't even care about our pavilion master, you won't be able to sit on the crown prince's throne. Men, throw them out. Ning Tianqing turned around. He really wanted to cripple this group of Dan Ji's alchemists. Stop. The rough man stretched out his hands and grabbed Ning Tianqing's sleeves. He shouted, Ning Tianqing, who do you think you are? We are Dan Ji's people. How dare you throw us out? Mo Xian is a good-for-nothing. He knelt down in Feng City and kowtowed to our pavilion master. As long as our pavilion master used his soul fire, he would be turned into black ashes. You won't be able to follow him. You won't be able to walk the path of God. Slap. Ning Tianxing couldn't take it anymore. He slapped the rough man's face and threw him to the ground. My patience is limited. You still want to hit me? Do you still dare to kill our Dan Ge's people? Mo Xian, you coward. Our pavilion master said that you are a good-for-nothing. Today, we will send you to the Western Paradise. Don't drag down the Tianhang Crown Prince and affect his great ambition. Brothers, let's go. The rough man roared and got up from the ground. He cleverly bypassed Ning Tianxing. A violent golden origin chi bloomed. He was a level 3 origin emperor. His body shot forward with a windstorm behind him. His speed was extremely fast, and as he rushed forward, he pulled out a long saber with a blood groove. The saber light shot out for more than 10 meters and slashed toward Mo Xian. At the same time, behind the rough man, the other 7 Dan Ge's alchemists all rushed forward as if they had suddenly turned into madmen. They were all Origin Soul realm martial artists. This scene shocked the Minister of Martial Ning and all the Imperial Guards. Dan Ge's people rebelled in Martial Ning. Not only did they insult the Prince of Mo Luo, but they also shouted in front of Ning Tianxing. Every time they opened their mouths, it was Qin Hao's intention. How could this be? The Martial Ning officials were stunned. Even Ning Chao Fan was stunned. He knew what kind of person his master was. Although he had fought with Mo Xian before, he would not send people to come all the way here just to point at Mo Xian and curse him. Moreover, his words were so despicable and vicious. Roar! Gu Kuei broke free from Zhong An's. To be precise, it was Zhong An's who let go. Together with Liu Bingyan, the 3 demon generals released their origin souls. Mo Xian did not move. A trace of confusion flashed through his eyes. Good for nothing, coward. These harsh words kept attacking his mind. A white-haired martial artist's face appeared in front of his eyes. His face was so cold and arrogant, like a beautiful youth, as if he was the only ruler of the world. So much so that Mo Xian forgot his current situation, forgot to avoid the attack, and even forgot to resist. Mo Xian did not move, but there was another person standing in front of him. It was a beautiful youth whose beauty could take a woman's breath away. A terrifying saber light slashed down. The rough man did not seem to take the beautiful youth seriously. The saber light followed the youth's position and slashed towards Mo Xian, trying to kill the 2 of them together. But at this moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. A cold aura swept over the beautiful youth. The saber light seemed to be frozen, and the saber light suddenly dissipated. The rough man's steps slowed. He saw a flawless face. That face was too beautiful. He could not imagine that a man could be so beautiful that even a god would be jealous of him. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1352. Translator, Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo, Studio Ulterior Motives. The brutish man was a little dazed and his heart started to beat faster. As a man, he had never thought that he would experience the feeling of being attracted by another man. At this moment, he was a little hesitant to do it. The beautiful young man smiled. His smile was pure and had a hint of shyness, like a shy flower blooming. A sharp light flashed in his eyes, and a terrifying spiritual storm swept over, piercing into the brutish man's eyes and directly affecting his mind. At this moment, the brutish man's pupils suddenly dilated as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. He stopped running completely and opened his mouth as if to shout, but no sound came out. From his expression, one could see that he was trying to struggle, but his body seemed to be held by a large hand. "Ha!" A crisp sound rang out as the long blade shattered. The brutish man's eyes that were filled with fear gradually lost their focus and finally fell to the ground dead. The beautiful young man walked past the man's body as if nothing had happened. She had a pure smile on her face as she looked at the other 7 members of the Pavilion of Elixir. However, at this moment, her clear eyes had become incomparably demonic. Her pupils seemed to be bleeding and the mole under her right eye flashed like a ruby. No one knew what the 7 Dangu members saw or what had happened. Everyone saw that the 7 people fell to the ground weakly. The essence souls that were about to explode were inexplicably dispersed. Like the brutish men, they lost all signs of life. 1 level, 3 origin emperor, and 7 origin soul realm martial artists. With a glance, they were all destroyed. They attacked, resisted, and killed. None of them. Like a gentle breeze, the 8 powerful martial artists fell to the ground weakly and died without a trace. The suffocating scene made everyone in the scene suck in a breath of cold air. Unknowingly, the Marshal Ning officials realized that their backs were dripping with cold sweat. Sorry to have frightened the princess. Ning Tianqing was the first to react and hurriedly went forward to apologize. The beautiful young man didn't look at him and walked along the bridge to the giant golden ship. During the whole process, it seemed that he only wanted to get on the ship and kill the 8 martial artists because his path was blocked. What a strong spiritual power, Ning Tianqing thought. Just now, even he felt suffocated. Mo Xian, the beautiful young man, urged in a dissatisfied tone after boarding the boat. When the absent-minded Mo Xian heard this voice, he seemed to wake up from a dream. He shivered and ignored the 8 corpses at his feet. He quickly boarded the ship, as if even if the sky were to collapse, it would not be as important as this command. Zhong An's, Gu Kuei, and Lu Bingyan dispersed their soul power and boarded the ship. When they stepped onto the bridge, Ning Tianqing carefully noticed that Lu Bingyan's expression was full of inferiority. Tianqing, protect the princess on the way. Emperor Ming's order came from the palace. Yes. Ning Tianqing nodded and secretly gave a look to Ning Chaofan and the others. Immediately, the Ning family followed closely behind the 3 demon generals and boarded the giant golden ship. Boundless white smoke spread out from the bottom of the ship. As the spiritual energy of the primal crystal stones burned, the giant golden ship slowly rose into the air. Then, it turned into an extremely fast stream of light and disappeared in the northwest direction of the Marshal Ning Empire. As expected of Empress Ling Xian's beloved daughter, this girl is powerful. Emperor Ming looked at the 8 corpses below. At that moment, he felt a fierce spiritual will fly out. The 8 martial artists were killed by the spiritual will. This kind of will had nothing to do with the level of spiritual energy. It was an offensive skill. If he guessed correctly, the first princess of the East Continent used an essence soul skill. Her essence soul was related to spiritual energy. She could even control and annihilate the essence souls of other martial artists. This kind of ability was terrifying. Waving his hand to let the imperial guards dispose of the corpses below, Emperor Ming put on a dignified face and shouted to all the ministers, "No one is allowed to leak what happened today. Anyone who violates this will be killed without mercy." He was not a fool. The group of boorish men were not Dan Ji's alchemists at all. He was afraid that someone deliberately sabotaged the relationship between Qin Hao and Ning Tianqing. Qin Hao was a good junior. Personally, Emperor Ming admired him very much. Naturally, he hoped that the Ning family would always maintain a friendly relationship with Qin Hao. However, now that Ning Tianqing had hooked up with the first princess of the East Continent, Emperor Ming knew what his son was thinking. Once Ning Tianqing succeeded, was there still a need to maintain a friendly relationship with Qin Hao? The divine phoenix is in the sky, and ordinary pythons are hard to find. Tianqing, I hope you won't be too stubborn. With a soft sigh, Emperor Ming disappeared. The blue sky was clear, and immortal clouds floated. Thousands of miles above the sky of the southern region, countless void warships were moving in a mess. The larger ones occupied the sky. The smaller ones were pressed down by the larger ones. Hundreds of thousands of void warships, just like the situation in the South Sea, were working hard toward the same goal, the southern region's inner sea. At this moment, Han Qingji, who was dressed in men's clothing, looked at Mo Xian with interest on a huge golden ship with a Ning Wu royal flag fluttering in the wind. She asked softly, after arriving in the southern region, "You were attacked by someone." My skills were not as good as his. Mo Xian lowered his head. As the most talented prince of the Moro kingdom, he did not dare to look at her face at all, although in his heart, he had fantasized about holding her hand as a companion several times in his dreams. But he knew very well that it could only be a dream. What's his name? Qingji Han's eyelashes fluttered slightly. There were very few people in the East Continent who had the ability to defeat Mo Xian. She was very curious about someone in the southern region who had done it. If I tell you, Princess, don't blame me. Mo Xian laughed awkwardly. As a vassal state of Daqin, even if the Moro kingdom was an empire and he was the prince of the Moro kingdom, he did not dare to call Qingji Han by her name. Tell me, Qingji Han said. This person's name is quite special. His name is Qin Hao. Mo Xian said uneasily. In order to relieve the pressure, he deliberately looked to the side. When a name Qin Hao entered her ears, Qingji Han's expression suddenly changed wildly. Her small cherry mouth opened and closed slightly, and she slightly lost her composure. Then, she chuckled and said, "It's quite special. If it were in Daqin, it would be enough to exterminate the whole family." Qin Hao is a taboo name. Even she, since she was a child, did not dare to mention it in front of that woman. Even if that woman raised her, taught her skills, and gave her the best in the world. However, Qingji Han knew that if she violated the taboo, even if she was the nominal daughter of that woman, she would have to die. That woman, who was as crazy as a demon, would definitely be merciless. Princess, the person you mentioned has something to do with me. What happened today must be a misunderstanding. Can you, Mo Xian, if you meet him again during the Omen period, kill him. If not, you will die. Qingji Han directly interrupted Ning Tianxing. Do you have anything else to say? Ning Tianxing had a trace of struggle in his heart, but looking at the attractive face in front of him, he did not care and said with a smile, "Nothing." In the distance, Ning Chaofan, who was assigning tasks to the warriors of a Ning clan, heard this and suddenly clenched his fist, his nails piercing into his flesh. At the same time, in the sky above the territory of the southern proud Xianyuan Empire, countless warships were also moving forward. Among the countless warships, 3 were particularly prominent because several imperial flags were flying on the top of the sails. These 3 warships were moving forward in a shape. The center was the main ship, and the left and right were the secondary ships. The left secondary ship hung the imperial flag of the Xianyuan Empire. There were people of the Xianyuan imperial family, disciples of the Lingshou sect, and disciples of the herbal medicine hall. The right secondary ship hung 2 imperial flags, the Yin Kingdom and the Northern Qi Kingdom. The left and right secondary ships carried a large number of warriors, forming a black mass. The 3-headed imperial ship exuded an incomparably majestic aura as it moved forward without regard for anything. The other warships, who were far away, all tried to avoid it. Those who could not avoid it in time were directly crushed by the 3-headed giant ship. At this moment, in the middle of the main ship, hearty laughter could be heard. A noble round table was surrounded by a group of gorgeous people. In order, they were Changhe Lo of the Lingshou sect, Murong Zijuan of the Yin Kingdom, Qi Yuan of the Northern Qi Kingdom, and Xianyuan Wuba's youngest son, who was far more talented than Xianyuan Feng. Xianyuan Jia. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1353. Translator, Nioibo Studio Editor. Nioibo Studio Gifts for Qin Haoan Edition. There were also people from the Zhanyuan Mansion and the Song family present. Xianyuan Jie played with the 8 jade slips in his hand. The jade slips were already shattered. He smiled coldly and said cynically, "Is this useful?" Using Dan Ji's name, he ordered people to cause trouble in Ningwu. This was Changhe Lo's doing. "Of course it's useful," Changhe Lo said confidently. "With Ning Tianxing's intelligence, it's not easy to trick him. But brother, don't forget that the people of Mo Luo have just arrived in the southern region and are not familiar with Qin Hao. It's easy to confuse their judgment with lies and lies. Even if they see through it, it doesn't matter. After all, Qin Hao defeated Mo Xian, and the humiliation of Feng City is a fact. How can they take this lying down?" Changhe Lo smiled. Mo Xian could take it, but his 3 demon generals couldn't. If they sent people to remind Mo Xian and expose the scandal, the hatred would only deepen. Xianyuan Jie gave him a thumbs up. Second, uncle recognizes you as his adopted son. Wonderful. Brother, you flatter me. Changhe Lo shook his head modestly. Ever since he provoked Qin Hao and brought a threat to the Spirit Beast sect, his status in the sect plummeted, and his days were very torturous. Even his master, the Spirit Beast sect leader, looked at Changhe Lo coldly. He was afraid that one day he would be abandoned by the sect. Fortunately, when the sect moved to Nan'ao, Xianyuan Wuying took the initiative to recognize Changhe Lo as his adopted son and enjoyed the treatment of a prince of the Xianyuan royal family. It was unknown whether it was because Xianyuan Wuying was grieving over the loss of his son or because both sides were facing a common enemy. But he actually took the initiative to recognize Changhe Lo as his adopted son and enjoyed the treatment of a prince of the Xianyuan royal family. Because of this, his status was rejuvenated and skyrocketed, far better than before. Before leaving, the Spirit Beast sect leader publicly announced that if Changhe Lo came back alive, he would directly succeed him as the sect leader. Of course, Changhe Lo was very happy. Everything he enjoyed now was originally Xianyuan Feng's. Whether it was food, clothing, housing, transportation, or cultivation resources, except for the fact that he did not have the blood of the Xianyuan family flowing in his veins. He was now the real prince of Nan'ao in the eyes of others. As Spirit Beast sect, he didn't care. Xianyuan Wuying Wuying. Xianyuan Wuying Wuying. Wuying Wuying Wuying. Wuying Wuying Wuying. Uncle Wuying, Wuying Wuying Wuying. That woman was a hurdle in his heart that he couldn't get over. He had been begging for years, but couldn't get what he wanted. In the end, he followed Qin Hao. If he had Xiao Han under his control, he would get her first. My second uncle pursues the supreme realm. Women are like clothes in his eyes. Moreover, Emperor Zhao's daughter has a divine aura protecting her body. The arrow is also integrated into her body. He can't use force. Xianyuan Jie patted Murong Zijuan's shoulder and smiled. If you meet Qin Hao this time, kill him. The woman is yours. Murong Zijuan heard this and was shocked. He showed a satisfied smile. Murong Zijuan, Jingwei is a good girl. No matter what, I won't allow you to hurt her. If not, the Northern Border Alliance against Daoyao will be dissolved. Qi Yuan slammed the wine bottle on the table, spilling the wine all over the floor. Suddenly, the Yin Kingdom's martial artists in the cabin snorted heavily, emitting an invisible, oppressive aura. The Northern Qi Kingdom's martial artists took a step forward and didn't back down. The harmonious atmosphere turned cold in an instant. Brother Qi, calm down. Don't hurt the harmony. Xianyuan Jie hurriedly tried to smooth things over. There's no room for discussion. Not only him, but also any of you. If you dare to touch Jingwei, I, Qi Yuan, will fight to the last man and bleed to the last drop of blood. I will not regret it until I die. Qi Yuan stood with a cold face and pointed at everyone's nose one by one. Prince Qi Yuan, you're a real man. How about this? We'll only kill Qin Hao. As for the rest, you and Prince Zijuan can discuss in private. My brother and I won't interfere. What do you think? Changhe Lo smiled appreciatively and secretly glanced at Murong Zijuan. His eyes were full of meaning. I can guarantee that I won't force her. Murong Zijuan promised with a straight face. Humph. Qi Yuan sat back down. However, the atmosphere had become awkward. Ahem, everyone, this time we're all on the God's path. Our goal should be to successfully become a disciple of the God's palace. Killing Qin Hao is secondary. The Emperor's Bay at the end of the inland sea is extremely dangerous. Don't let this affect our unity. Xianyuan, Jie reminded. Don't worry, I'm not that petty, Murong Zijuan said. If you don't touch Jingwei, my men will try their best to cooperate with you. But if you dare to touch her, don't blame me for being ruthless, Qi Yuan said firmly. He didn't hate Qin Hao, but if Qin Hao didn't die, Xiao Han would be in danger. In order to protect Xiao Han, Qi Yuan could only temporarily join this group of scumbags. Okay, Let's drink together to celebrate Qin Hao's death in advance. Oh, by the way, Brother Zijuan, is your friend behind the scenes reliable? Xianyuan Jie took a sip and then looked at Murong Zijuan with an uneasy face. Murong Zijuan said, "Of course he's reliable. He has made a heavenly pact. You know the consequences of defying the heavenly pact better than I do." "That's good. I was really afraid that he would be tempted by Qin Hao to betray us and stab us in the back after staying with Qin Hao for too long." Xianyuan Jie breathed a sigh of relief. Those who defy the heavenly pact will be punished by the heavenly law, and their entire clan will be wiped out. It seemed that he was overthinking. Murong Zijuan's mouth twitched. Zhou Wudao definitely wouldn't dare to defy the heavenly pact, and he wouldn't do anything to Murong Zijuan. However, he really didn't know whether he would do anything to Xianyuan Jie and Chang Hello. After all, Zhou Wudao was too fierce and powerful. He couldn't be controlled at all. It was already a good thing that Zhou Wudao didn't control others. Nen Ao has the geographical advantage of being close to the inland sea. Our speed is definitely faster than Qin Hao's, so it's convenient for an ambush. Zheng Dynasty is near the sea, so Qin Hao must have taken the water route. Ask your friend where they are now. Royal Brother and I have prepared a big gift for Qin Hao. Chang Hello looked at Murong Zijuan. Wait a moment. Murong Zijuan took out a voice transmission stone from his sleeve and transmitted the question to the stone. Immediately, the voice transmission stone lit up in his hand, and 3 big words appeared. Songyu Mountain. Songyu Mountain. Chang Hello and Xianyuan Jie looked at each other. Xianyuan Jie couldn't help but smile coldly. Just nice. Qin Hao's speed is quite fast. The Zheng family ship seems to be very powerful. What gift did you prepare for him? Will Jingwa be in danger? Qi Yuan immediately became nervous. He was worried about Xiao Han. There shouldn't be any danger, but it will definitely be exciting enough. Don't worry. With Qin Hao and Zheng Qingqi's abilities, it won't be fatal to them. At most, it will make some holes in their ship. Xianyuan Jie was very confident. If the ship is damaged, the inland sea will be their burial ground. Chang Hello raised his wine cup and drank it all, as if he was drinking Qin Hao's blood. Compared to Fallen Emperor Bay, the inland sea wasn't worth mentioning, but it was also known as the Sea of Death. It wasn't easy to cross that place. Southern Sea, Songyu Mountain. Zheng Qingqi looked at Zhou Wudao strangely and said, "Brother Zhou, why did you ask us where we were going?" During this period of contact with Zhou Wudao, he didn't talk much. When he did, it was always related to Qin Hao. This was the first time Zheng Qingqi heard him ask a question that had nothing to do with Qin Hao. "Oh, I'm just curious." Zhou Wudao pointed to the distant coastal area. There was a mountain peak there. The mountain peak looked low, but in fact it could be seen from a vast South Sea, which was enough to prove that it was very majestic. "This mountain is quite big. I can feel the dense, moist air from afar. It's suitable for water-type martial artists to cultivate. It will definitely be twice the result with half the effort. So it's called Kanjia Mountain. It's really a good place." Zhou Wudao was full of praise. "You've awakened your third soul, and it's a water-type soul. Are you looking for a good place to go?" Qin Hao stared at him coldly. His eyes were dark and deep, and no one could see through him. But this gaze seemed to be able to see through Zhou Wudao's body. Everything about him was in Qin Hao's eyes. "Don't play tricks. If you don't, I'll throw you into the sea." Qin Hao warned him. He knew very well that Zhou Wudao couldn't have awakened his third soul. If he had, he would have attacked him long ago to wash away the shame of the Emperor Martial competition. There was something fishy going on in this fellow's heart. "One of my subordinates has a water-type soul." The corners of Zhou Wudao's eyes trembled. He was still very afraid of Qin Hao. The white-haired old man was definitely not pretending to scare him. It was very likely that he would really throw him into the sea. "Pavilion Master Qin, His Highness didn't lie to you." At this time, a thin and tall young man stood out. He circulated his primordial qi and communicated with his natal soul. Behind him, there was a burst of light. In the light, a kettle appeared. Suddenly, a large amount of water vapor filled the air. A mutated soul. Qin Hao was a little surprised. This thing that looked like a teapot seemed to be able to spray water. As Dindi in his previous life, he was very knowledgeable. The water that a mutated soul, like a teapot, sprayed out was definitely not ordinary. I'm a healer. Of course, I can also use poison. The thin and tall martial artist cupped his fists and smiled. Tiangong. Not bad, Qin Hao said lightly and glanced at Zhou Wudao. This time, Zhou Wudao came from the East Continent. Unlike Mo Xian, who brought the 3 demon generals and a large group of guards, Zhou Wudao looked very powerful. Zhou Wudao only brought 3 people. The 7th old ancestor could not follow him. At this moment, Zhou Wudao only had 2 followers. One was the young man with the teapot, and the other was Child. The child seemed to be suffering from some kind of illness. He was thin and pale, and his body had stopped developing. It seemed that he would not grow up. Perhaps his actual age might be older than Qin Hao. However, this child was very timid. After boarding the ship, he had never come out of the cabin. Qin Hao did not dare to underestimate him. He would not be deceived by appearance. Zhou Wudao was very strong. How could the people who were qualified to follow him be ordinary people? The young man with the teapot and the thin and pale child were not weaker than the 3 demon generals. In other words, they were not worse than the current Sayogwa. After all, Gu Kuei had injured Guadi with a punch in the Gentleman Lookout Tower. Don't make a fool of yourself in front of a master. Why don't you go down? Zhou Wudao scolded in a low voice. The young man with the teapot shrugged his shoulders at Qin Hao. He did not seem to be afraid of Zhou Wudao at all. He swaggered away with his hands behind his back. Perhaps he was going to play with the thin and pale child. It's better to have a healer by your side when going on a long journey. Tiangong respects me very much and is very obedient. Zhou Wudao looked a little embarrassed and hurriedly tried to make himself look good. He was not lying. The young man with the teapot followed him because of admiration. With me here, you don't need any healer. If you behave, I can let you follow the team. Qin Hao turned and walked away. He did not belittle himself. Playing healer? Who could compare with Dindi? Of course, he did not promise to take Zhou Wudao to become a disciple of the Divine Palace. After all, whether Qin Hao could complete the Divine Path was still unknown. If he wanted to become a disciple of the Divine Palace, it would depend on Zhou Wudao's ability. This guy, Zhou Wudao, shook his head. As expected, he was as arrogant as ever. He did not take Tiangong seriously at all. Of course, this was normal. After all, Qin Hao did not even take him seriously. Along the way, he did not know how many times he had threatened him in private. Whether he could enter the Divine Palace alive, Zhou Wudao was not sure. But he knew that if he was threatened by Qin Hao again, he was very likely to be oversensitive and scared until he fell ill. Although that was the case, Tiangong's ability was still very strong. After all, the other party was a monster who could withstand his Taotai source spirit and not have his vitality swallowed. Zhou Wudao's soul power damage was far from catching up with Tiangong's recovery. So far, Tiangong was also the second abnormal person besides Qin Hao to be able to withstand the Taotai source spirit head-on. Although compared with Qin Hao, he was still a little weaker. But sooner or later, Qin Hao would know how powerful the other party was. At this time, Zhou Wudao's eyes looked in the direction of Tsonya Mountain. He could vaguely see that several warships were quickly approaching. They were far away and had already formed a formation, surrounding the Zheng dynasty's warship route. Zhu Qian, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1354. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, who did it? Your Highness, there is something strange about those ships. On the observation deck, with a 20-meter sail, a warrior of the Zheng tribe who was on the lookout looked suspiciously at the left side of the warship and pointed in that direction. Over there, the 7-headed warship was charging at an extremely fast speed. The 3-headed warship blocked the front of the Zheng tribe's warship, while the 4-headed warship split up and formed teams of 2. One team charged at the front, while the other team circled around the back of the warship. Are there other omens? Zheng Qingqi muttered to himself suspiciously. Along the way, Omens could be seen everywhere. However, the seven-headed warship was coming at them aggressively and seemed to be up to no good. High alert, speed up, and break away from them. Oh my God. Zheng Qingqi wanted to give the order and charge out to break away from the enemy's encirclement. However, at this moment, the fastest three-headed warship had a dazzling glow on its bow. That was the location of the main crystal cannon. They were going to attack. Enemy attack. Zheng Qingqi only had time to shout these two words. Boom, boom, boom. Three blazing white light beams were like lasers that pierced through space as they surged from the left side. The cannons were fierce and ferocious, causing huge waves to form on the surface of the sea. They were extremely powerful military crystal cannons. At this moment, Zheng Qingqi was dumbfounded. The enemy's attack was so fast and violent. The cannons were deafening and numbing. With such strength, it was easy to tear apart a low-level primitive emperor. Zheng Qingqi could only block one of the cannons, even if he used all his strength. As for increasing the speed of the warship to avoid the bombardment, it was already too late. Hua! Water splashed in front of his eyes as a scorching red flame pierced into the sea like a sea-stabilizing needle. At this moment, the body of the warship tilted. Borrowing the momentum, the Zheng tribe warship dodged 20 meters to the right. At the moment of life and death, they managed to avoid the landing spot of the crystal cannons. Boom! A huge wave exploded from the left side. The rising seawater splashed onto Zheng Qingqi. The force of the falling seawater caused him to stagger 2 steps back. The deck of the warship was instantly filled with half a foot of water. Fortunately, the warship managed to avoid it. Kill! Zheng Qingqi's eyes were ablaze with fire, and a light appeared behind him. A soul ship appeared in the void, and he leaped onto it. Stepping on the soul ship, he turned into a stream of light and rushed forward. In front of Zheng Qingqi, a giant beast roared. The dog spirit flapped its fleshy wings and carried Qin Hao towards the seven-headed enemy ship. If it wasn't for Qin Hao's quick reaction and quick thinking, the Zheng race's battleship would have been shattered and sunk to the bottom of the sea. K.Er, protect your sister. Don't let the others come over either, Qin Hao shouted. He was not sure how many enemies there were and how strong their cultivations were. He was agile and could attack or retreat at will. If he couldn't handle it, it would be convenient for him to delay for a few seconds and let the others leave first. In the cabin, everyone was alarmed. Zhou Wudao's 2 attendants, the disciples of Knight Luo Palace, and the remaining 4 warriors of the Zheng tribe all ran to the deck. However, the skinny and fair child was dragged out by Tan Geng. He stood on the deck and vomited crazily, vomiting until his legs trembled. High in the sky, Qin Hao was faster than Zheng Qingqi. The dog spirit drew a beautiful arc in the air and directly attacked the 3-headed ship that was firing cannons. The 3-headed ship wanted to block the sailing path, so he had to get rid of it first. However, as he approached, he sensed a dangerous aura coming from the seawater below. Qin Hao looked down and saw water vapor surging within the seawater. A blazing arc of light flickered from the blue waves, as if it was rising into the air. Swoosh! Qin Hao grabbed the great void sword. Soul fire wrapped around the sword, and he slashed down from the sky. This sword drew a half-moon-shaped flame blade. At the same time, the blazing arc of light hidden in the sea finally emerged. It was a golden blade light that slashed at the dog's spirit. However, this blade was still unable to contend with Qin Hao. When the flame and the blade light collided, the latter shattered and the flame went straight to the bottom of the sea. Immediately, a scream was heard. A corpse with its body separated from its body floated up, its blood mixed with the sea water. Second level, Martial Monarch. I was almost tricked by this person, Qin Hao said. Fortunately, he had been vigilant. The enemy was very smart and had actually hidden people underwater in advance. However, it probably wasn't a deal with him, but to attack the warship from underwater. Unfortunately, Qin Hao had discovered them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At that moment, more than 10 figures flew out from the 3-headed ship. Their auras weren't too strong, and they tried to stop Qin Hao from approaching. At that moment, the three-headed ship's yuan crystal cannons lit up again. The enemy's division of labor was clear, and their goal was clear. They wanted to destroy the Zheng dynasty's warship at all costs. Block the yuan crystal cannons. Qin Hao ordered the dog spirit. His interspatial ring flickered as he grabbed something and threw it in Zheng Qingqi's direction. Then, he raised his sword and charged at the martialists in front of him. They were all ordinary yuan venerates. Roar! The dog spirit separated from Qin Hao. Its huge, beastly body stood between the enemy ship and the Zheng dynasty's warship. Its body swelled rapidly like a rapidly inflating balloon. In the blink of an eye, it became extremely round, making people wonder if it would explode at any moment. Just as the three-headed ship rumbled and fired its yuan crystal cannons, the dog spirit's round body suddenly shrank. Then, it spat out a mouthful of flames of the three beams of white light. At that moment, the dog spirit relied on its own strength to withstand the simultaneous bombardment of the three cannons. Even Zheng Qingqi couldn't do it, but it had. After all, the dog spirit had become a martial monarch. However, in just a few seconds, the three beams of white light suppressed the dog spirit's flames and blasted it into the sea. The power of the yuan crystal cannons was also exhausted by the dog spirit. Destroy! With a swing of his sword, more than a dozen bodies fell into the sea. Qin Hao's body was like a shooting star as he arrived above the enemy's ship. The yuan crystal cannons were too powerful. The dog spirit couldn't withstand a second round of bombardment. So, it was crucial to destroy the ship. Dense dragon scales climbed up his arms. His two souls opened up and a huge fireball was born in the void. Accompanied by the roar of a dragon, three beams of fire lit up the surface of the South Sea. At that moment, a battle had also broken out on the Zheng dynasty's warship. As Qin Hao had expected, the people hiding in the sea wanted to destroy the ship. Perhaps their attack method was flawless in the eyes of the enemy. Unfortunately, Qin Hao had discovered a portion of them, and they had no choice but to meet the enemy head-on. On Zheng Qingqi's side, the enemy had succeeded. They had climbed onto the Zheng dynasty's warship by diving and immediately engaged in a fierce battle with the Knight Luo Palace disciples and Zheng dynasty warriors. There were many enemies, including 3 lower-level martial monarchs. However, the Knight Luo Palace disciples weren't to be trifled with either. Every one of them had passed the cruel selection of the 100 battle platform. Moreover, there was K.Er, Palace Lord Ye's personal disciple, and the sinister Zhou Wudao on the ship. In fact, 2 of the martial monarchs were killed by K.Er and Yi Yao as soon as they entered the cabin. The other guy was even more unlucky. He had encountered Zhou Wudao. There's someone who's alone. The martial monarch with the flat nose climbed up from the stern. He had wanted to destroy the ship directly, but he saw someone standing in front of him. Zhou Wudao was also startled. A face suddenly popped up from under the ship without warning. Anyone would have shivered. Moreover, he was considering whether he should make a move as a gesture. If he didn't, it would be difficult to explain to the white-haired man. "He's one of us," Zhou Wudao said with a calm gaze. There was no time to think. It was better not to accidentally injure him first. The flat nose seemed to be confused by this sentence. One of us? Who's one of us? When they accepted the mission, Changhe Lo hadn't mentioned it to them. If there really were one of us on the target ship, why would they still dive here? Wouldn't they have destroyed the ship long ago? Moreover, this guy didn't look like he had dived here. His clothes weren't even wet. Go to hell. The flat nose appeared quickly, but he attacked even faster. His fists flickered as he mercilessly attacked Zhou Wudao. Zhou Wudao's gaze suddenly became sharp. He had already said it was him, but the other party still wanted to mess with him. Did he want to kill him and Qin Hao together? Morong Zijuan, you can't believe it. Zhou Wudao clenched his hand. Their fists collided and effortlessly crushed the flat nose's fists. Big brother, he's one of us. The flat nose's wrists were broken, and blood flowed all over the floor. His eyes were filled with fear as he endured the great pain. Go to hell, Zhou Wudao replied in the other party's tone. At some point, a black crow had stepped on his shoulder. The black crow rushed over like a gust of wind and pierced through the flat nose's head. The other party fell straight to the ground, his spirit destroyed. Silently taking out the sound transmission stone, Zhou Wudao looked around and realized that no one was around. He crouched at the corner of the stern and tried his best to conceal himself in the darkness. He spoke gently. Murong Zijuan, you tricked me. While the battle on the ship was intense, Zhang Qingqi also landed on the 4 ships. The sole ship under his feet flickered intensely as he was about to crash and destroy one of the ships. All of a sudden, 2 gigantic shadows flew over his head. Zhang Qingqi looked up and saw 1 black and 1 yellow, 2 rare centaurs. Their 400 zhang tall bodies slammed into the 2 ships at the front of the ship. In an instant, the 2 ships couldn't withstand the pressure and crumbled on the spot. The sea was dyed red with human blood. Ahei's Huang entered the sea like a huge beast. He was even holding a pair of frightening purple hammers. When the 2 hammers collided, an ear-splitting rumble was heard and densely packed thunderbolts were shot out. The thunderbolts spread along the sea's surface like an ocean of thunderbolts, engulfing the remaining 2 enemy ships. When the thunderbolts dispersed, the sea surface was filled with martial artists' corpses and shattered decks. This is too cruel. I'd better go back. Zhang Qingqi steered the sole ship back innocently. At this time, the battle on the warship also came to an end. Among the Night Net Palace disciples and the Zheng tribe warriors, 4 were injured, but their injuries weren't serious. Tiangong was treating them. The skinny, fair child was still vomiting. Zhou Wudao hid the sound transmission stone and dragged the corpse with a flat nose over. He returned with Qin Hao and the dog spirit. He smiled and said, "You're quite fast. I only killed 1, and you're done." Qin Hao glanced at the corpse and couldn't be bothered with him. He rubbed K.O.'s head, and his expression instantly became gentle. "You're not injured, right? Do you need Tiangong to heal you?" "Sister and I are fine." "Oh, right, brother-in-law." 2 fellows ran into the cabin. "Sister Yao and I killed them together." They were both Emperor Realm cultivators. Kate clenched her little fists proudly. She was very proud. "The one I killed was also an Emperor Realm cultivator. He even scared me," Zhou Wudao hurriedly said. "Tiangong, help treat your master." Qin Hao coldly threw down a sentence, turned around, and pulled Zhang Qingqi away. "Am I being isolated?" Zhou Wudao muttered to himself. "Do you need treatment?" Tiangong nudged the absent-minded Zhou Wudao. "We'll talk about it when you can stop him vomiting." Zhou Wudao glanced at the skinny, fair child in disgust and shook his head. He silently walked back to the stern. His back was so lonely. "Are you okay?" Qin Hao and Zhang Qingqi walked back to the bow. Here, the 2 wounded warriors of the Zheng tribe were bandaging their wounds. "Your Highness, Pavilion Master Qin, we failed to protect you. Please punish us, Your Highness." The 2 of them didn't care about bandaging their wounds and knelt on 1 knee. "Since you've stepped onto the divine path, you've relieved yourself of your former duties. There is no Your Highness here, nor is there Pavilion Master Qin. We're all brothers," Zhang Qingqi said and helped the 2 of them up. "Thank you, Your Highness." The 2 of them were extremely moved. They were warriors cultivated by the Zheng tribe and stood out among tens of thousands of people. They were extremely talented. This time, they stepped onto the divine path mainly to protect Zhang Qingqi. They didn't hesitate to sacrifice their own lives to ensure that he became a disciple of the divine palace. However, Zhang Qingqi's words brought everyone's status together. On the divine path, everyone was equal. There was no master and servant. If the servants of the Zheng tribe won the position of a disciple of the divine palace, he would also be happy. How could they not be moved by such a young master? Faintly, they could see tears falling from the eyes of the 2. They also wanted to fight for their dreams. Who would be willing to be driven by others and be sacrificed? However, their original intention of protecting Zhang Qingqi would not change. In the past, it was their duty. Now it was for their brothers. Qin Hao smiled slightly. He could see the changes in the 2 of them. Zhang Qingqi's skill of controlling people was quite good. Young master, pavilion master, the attack today is definitely not simple. We've been targeted, a warrior of the Zhang tribe said. His name was Zhang San. This time, he accompanied them. He didn't have a name, only a number. The power of the Yuan crystal cannon is far beyond the ordinary grade on the market. Obviously, it was built by the Empire's military craftsmen. Ordinary armorers don't have this kind of technology and craftsmanship. The 7 ships surrounded us. It was premeditated. Qin Hao also saw it. If ordinary explorers intercepted them and cut off their qualification to the divine path, it would be impossible to gather so many people at once. Jiutian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1355. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, they were coming. Half a month later, the Zheng clan warships changed their course from north to west, abandoning the water and flying in the sky. After another half a month, they arrived at the inland sea after crossing countless wastelands. The warships were extremely important. If they were destroyed, crossing the inland sea would be impossible. To avoid being ambushed again, Qin Hao and the others slowed down and were much more cautious. Qin Hao and Zheng Qingqi analyzed that the 7-headed warships should be full of conquerors. If the other party was not conquerors, they would not have been so bold. When the Divine Palace opened, warriors over 30 years old were not allowed to step onto the battle platform. Warriors who had obtained the Divine Palace order were not allowed to be escorted by their elders. This was a rule set by the Divine Palace. If one became a disciple of the Divine Palace, he must abandon all external forces. Those who violated the rule would bear the consequences. As for the consequences, Tsaowa had seen it with his own eyes. An old Emperor Realman did not abide by the rules and wanted to step onto the battle platform to compete with the young people. As a result, he stepped onto the platform proudly and disappeared. On the way, he also saw other ships suddenly explode, and the people on board died. Why did this happen? They must have violated the rules set by the Divine Palace. This showed that the majesty of the Divine Palace was unquestionable. Therefore, the warriors on the 7-headed warships must have passed the test to the battle platform and held the Divine Palace order. Although their strength was relatively weak, they had a large number of people and were very organized. All of this was planned by someone. Who was the mastermind? Qin Hao first thought of Nan Ao's Xinyuan family. Nan Ao had the ability to control the battle platform. With their huge strength and resources, they could win over desperados. Moreover, they had a motive to attack Qin Hao. Of course, Emosien's people could not be ruled out for revenge. But in comparison, the Xinyuan family was more likely. Qin Hao did not care about this. The two sides were already opposing each other. Sooner or later, they would meet on the divine path to determine the final life and death. Who would live and who would die depended on their own abilities. But there was one thing that puzzled Qin Hao. Why did the Xinyuan family calculate Zheng Jian's whereabouts so accurately, as if they knew it like the back of their hand? Was there a traitor? Thinking about many questions in his mind, Qin Hao stood on the deck and looked at the inland sea. What he saw was the scene as far as his eyes. To reach the inland sea in a month, he didn't know if this speed was fast or slow. However, at this moment, the scene in the inner sea could be said to be extraordinarily lively. At a glance, countless people had gathered. The invaders rushed over from all directions in the southern region. Among them were countless experts from the East Continent, Western Liang, Southern Region, Northern Border, and the overseas islands. Some people were driving boats forward on the surface of the sea, some were stepping on flying artifacts, and some were driving giant sea demons forward in the sea. They were densely packed like an army, and their scale was incomparably vast. As for this scene, it might last for a long time. After all, there were still signs on the way. The inner sea is strange and dangerous. There are often terrifying storms and whirlpools. Soon, many people will be unlucky. Zheng Qingqi looked sympathetically at the sky. In the sky, Many martial artists were standing on flying artifacts. Controlling a flying magic tool consumed yuan qi. Once they encountered danger and their physical strength was insufficient, they might be buried at the bottom of the sea. In the inner sea, there were also native sea beasts. They were no less ferocious than the sea demons of the southern sea. It was as if Zheng Qingqi could already see countless corpses floating on the surface of the sea. Brother Qingqi, is the inner sea really so terrifying? Xiaogua's eyes were filled with curiosity. After recuperating on the boat for a month, his injuries were all healed. The Zheng family's ambition is to conquer the sea. However, there are two sea regions that we haven't explored fully even after dozens of generations. Zheng Qingqi looked at the sea below the boat. One was the southern sea that separated the northern border and the southern region. The other was the inner sea beneath them. The water is very murky. Qin Hao also looked at the sea. The water was yellowish, as if mixed with sand. However, the sand did not sink to the bottom of the sea. It was puzzling. Let's return to the cabin. At this speed, we will be in danger soon. Remember, no matter what, do not open any ventilation windows. If our boat is unfortunately destroyed and the sea monsters enter, blast them with yuan qi. Do not engage in close combat. Zheng Qingqi exhorted. The last sentence was directed at Qin Hao. He knew that Qin Hao's physique was strong. However, no matter how strong his physique was, he would not be able to defeat the sea demons of the inner sea. All right, Qin Hao nodded. Zheng Qingqi's clansmen loved the sea and were conquering it. Their understanding of the various seas of the southern region definitely exceeded his. The group returned to the cabin. Zheng Qingqi summoned Second Zheng to pass on the message to Zhou Wudao. He also asked him to come in quickly. Zhou Wudao had remained on the deck throughout the journey and had never come in. Zheng Qingqi knew that this was because of Qin Hao, but this time Zhou Wudao came in obediently. It was as if he could tell that there was going to be terrifying danger, and he did not want to be fed to the fish. Lower the sails and release Shriek, Zheng Qingqi ordered solemnly. At this time, everyone was gathered in the cockpit. Yao, K, and the other night Luo Palace disciples were protecting Shao Han in a specially made sturdy cabin. Shriek? What shriek? Zhou Wudao looked around and was a little confused. No one paid attention to him. The 5 warriors of the Zheng tribe operated the mechanism and lowered the external sails. They took out a few large boxes and carefully opened them as if they were treasure chests. They took out metal balls from the boxes and hugged one ball in each hand as if they were holding a human head. They hurried to the other cabins. Ridiculous. Zhou Wudao scratched his head. He really could not understand. There are beast souls sealed in the balls. Are you using them to scare the sea demons? Qin Hao's spiritual power was strong. He could feel the soul fluctuations in the metal balls. Yes, they're treasures passed down by our ancestors. Zheng Qingqi nodded with a new level of respect. Their Zheng family also had emperor-level masters. Their ancestors had killed powerful sea beasts and sealed their beast souls. As time passed, although they were not as violent and ferocious as before, they could still throw a ball into the sea and fix it around the ship. It could pose a certain threat to the monsters in the inner sea, and the low-level sea monsters would not dare to approach it. So powerful. Xiao will learn something new. It seemed that conquering the sea was not an easy task. The danger in the sea was no less than the danger on land. This is nothing. My ancestor even killed a beast emperor. Zhou Wudao crossed his arms and said proudly. His pride was ignored by everyone. At this time, Zheng Qingqi was personally steering the ship in the cockpit. In front of him was a huge crystal. The image in the crystal was very clear. Through the refraction of the crystal, he could see the situation at the bottom of the sea. It was convenient for him to steer the ship and avoid the submerged reefs. At the same time, around the bottom of the ship, small cannons stretched out and emitted a hazy halo. Apparently, the energy of the primordial crystals had been gathered and could be launched at any time. Looking at everything quietly, Qin Hao thought to himself that the Zheng family sailing skills were indeed powerful. They had all kinds of perfect combinations and were impeccable. Even in the East Continent, there were few Navy teams that could compare. At this moment, he finally understood why the Zheng family built an empire in the southern region. On the surface, the Zheng family was weaker than the other three emperors. However, their strength was in the sea. Zheng Qingqi sailed in silence. The further he went, the more nervous he became. It was as if something terrible could happen at any time. No one disturbed him. In the outside world, the densely packed explorers, whether it was the ships on the sea, the warriors riding sea beasts in the sea, or the warriors flying in the air, were all moving forward peacefully. No one wantonly attacked others. Under such circumstances, acting rashly might bring trouble to oneself. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. It was very peaceful. The inland sea was very big. The fallen Emperor Bay was at the end. All the explorers did not know how much longer they had to travel. After all, they were all juniors. No one had really reached the end of the inland sea. But 5 days later, there was a strange phenomenon in the outside world. The warriors flying in the void clearly felt that the gravity on their bodies was getting stronger and stronger. The consumption was increasing crazily. Their vitality could not support it. As for the warriors riding sea beasts, their mounts began to roar uneasily. Their speed became slower and slower. It seemed that they were unwilling to go deeper. On the contrary, the ships moving forward on the sea were not affected much. But this did not mean that there was no danger. If someone observed carefully, they would find that the water quality of the sea had changed again. The murky water at the beginning had gradually become white water, and the further they went, the thicker the white water became. It was as if they had fallen into disgusting bubbles. Zheng De, Zheng Air, guard the screams. Zheng San, Zheng Si, Zheng Wu, control the tail cannon and side cannon. Brother Qin Hao, Little Gua, you are with me. You are in charge of the bow cannon. If I say fire, you fire. Zheng Qingqi's eyes were a little red. He seemed very nervous. This was his first time entering the inland sea. If it were not for being selected as a disciple of the Divine Palace, he would never have come. The group training said that after traveling 80,000 miles in the inland sea, something extremely dangerous would happen. Today, they had traveled more than 80,000 miles. Okay, Qin Hao and Xiaogu sat on Zheng Qingqi's left and right. In front of the two of them, there was a pair of controllers. These were the machines used to control the bow cannon. Although they had never played with them, Zheng Qingqi asked them to stay with him. Obviously, he was taking care of this. Zheng De and Zheng Air were veterans. After receiving the order, they disappeared from the steering cabin. What about me? And Tan Geng, by Xiaodong, what are the three of us doing? Zhou Wudao was a little anxious. He could at least find something for himself to do. He could not just stare. He was the prince of the great Zhou dynasty. He was not a useless person. Tan Geng, can your primordial spirit clear the mind? Zheng Qingqi asked. He stared at the crystal and carefully observed the situation at the bottom of the sea. Yes, not only can it clear people, but it can also make people excited, crazy, and go berserk. It can make them fight beyond their normal level, Tan Geng said excitedly. It seemed that he was more useful than Zhou Wudao. No, I don't need you to make everyone go crazy. You just need to help us stay awake. Zheng Qingqi's hands began to tremble. He could faintly see from the crystal that there was a thick white thing floating at the bottom of the sea. It was like a ghost floating around. This thing made his hair stand. Yes, Captain. Tan Geng's soul power surged, and his primordial spirit was ready to open. Xiaogua, let me pilot the cannon. I am the higher level than you. At this moment, Zhou Wudao took the initiative to walk over. He looked at Qin Hao on his left, and his eyes were filled with a strong fighting spirit. He wanted to compete with the other party to see whose cannon was more accurate and kill the most sea monsters. Brother Zhou, you wait for orders. If Zheng De and the rest, or Qin Hao and Xiaogua can't hold on, you can replace them immediately. As for Bai Xiaodong, Zheng Qingqi finally looked back. When he saw the skinny white child who was vomiting, he frowned and said helplessly, "Let him do his thing first." This. Zhou Wudao's face darkened. He was a second stage Origin Emperor expert with twin life spirits. The second soul was an ancient beast. He was actually sitting on the bench and being a substitute. Blurg. The skinny white child vomited again. His eyes looked very innocent. Attention, they're coming. Zhengde, activate the scream. Zheng Qingqi shouted into a sensor tube. At this moment, a buzzing sound suddenly rang out in the cockpit, as if tens of thousands of wasps had flown in. It was so loud that one's mind was in chaos, and the entire warship began to sway. Nine Heaven's Divine Emperor. Chapter 1356. Entering the sea. Battle the Sea Emperor in the inner sea. Every ship was swaying, giving people the feeling that a monster was pushing the ship and was about to push it over. Qinhao saw through the crystal that there were countless strange white balls floating at the bottom of the sea. Each of them was swimming very fast. Because they were so fast, they floated here and there, creating undercurrents that crashed under the ship, causing it to lose balance. Only when one of the balls floated close to the front of the crystal did Qinhao see it clearly. It was a school of strange fish. These fish were the size of chopsticks and had a corpse-like color. They were very deformed, and their mouths were especially large. Just their mouths alone took up half of their bodies. When they swam, their mouths kept opening and closing, and their 2 rows of sharp teeth made kacha-kacha sounds. Following Zheng Qingqi's order, 5 Zheng warriors threw the metal balls that sealed the souls of the powerful sea beasts into the sea and hung them around the bottom of the warship. The souls and the metal balls roared, creating sound waves that spread across the bottom of the sea. The strange fish that floated here, and they were afraid. They wanted to get closer, but didn't dare to. Too disgusting. I've never seen such ugly fish. Sayo was stomach-churned. He resisted the urge to vomit and swore that he would never eat fish again. Don't relax. They're just the lowest level species in the inner sea. The truly powerful ones are yet to come. It was Zheng Qingqi's first time seeing this kind of fish. It was just like what his ancestors had recorded. He knew that this kind of fish was actually very weak. Their bodies were made of cartilage. An ordinary person could destroy them with one punch. The key was that they lived in groups, and there were a lot of them. Every time they moved, there would be tens of thousands of them. Moreover, with their deformed mouths and their sharp teeth, if a water elephant fell in, it would be eaten to pieces immediately. Not even its bones would be left. According to Zheng Qingqi's estimation, the strong sea beasts in the inner sea wouldn't easily provoke such a large school of strange fish. Qinhao nodded. Sometimes, quantity could cause a qualitative change. Moreover, he had a vague feeling that the flow of yuan qi had slowed down a lot. If a warrior lost his yuan qi and could only fight with a school of fish, that scene was unimaginable. At this moment, with the metal balls hanging from the bottom of the warship was safe. However, things were different for the other ships outside. When the strange fish attacked, many of the sentinels did not notice it. Moreover, even if they did notice the strange fish, how could they, who were so powerful, care about it? Junior sister, come here. This is an ocean pearl that senior brother picked up from a beach. Look at how beautiful it is. It's like the biggest and brightest star among the stars. It's as beautiful as you. A young man who was flirting with girls had a smile on his face. He was holding a string of pearls and was about to hang it around the neck of the girl in front of him. Whoosh! Suddenly, a white shadow shot out from the water like an arrow and shot past the young man. His vision blurred, and before he could see clearly what it was, a palm disappeared from his wrist. "Ah!" the young man screamed. In the next second, his screams were swallowed up by countless leaping white shadows. Together with the small boat under him and the woman who was as beautiful as the biggest star on the boat, they turned into countless blood and merged with the seawater. The same thing happened at the same time. Like a plague, the news spread throughout the inland sea. The candidates who held the God Palace order welcomed their first challenge on the God's path. Be alert. The sea demons have appeared. Zheng Qingqi shouted. The fish at the bottom of the sea avoided them and did not dare to get close to the battleship. As they continued to go deeper, dark projections flashed through the crystal screen. In the beginning, the dark projections were relatively small. Now, the size of the projections was constantly increasing. Some of them were still trying to get close to the battleship. At this moment, everyone could clearly see the appearances of the inner sea demons through the crystal images. There were parasitic water snakes that were as thin and long as ropes, octopuses with hundreds of eyes on their heads waving their tentacles, and water spiders that used their spider spears to move water. There were all kinds of strange and unusual species, and they were innumerable. They wandered around the battleship again and again. They were no longer so afraid of the vibrating sound waves in the metal ball. After all, with the passage of time, the beast souls sealed in the metal ball were far less powerful than before. Finally, the big octopus with its tentacles and face full of eyes moved. All of its tentacles were bunched together as if countless arms were hugging its head. It turned into a ball and rushed forward. 100 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters. The distance was rapidly shrinking. Attack! Zheng Qingqi shouted. Qin Hao and Xiaowa had been tense the whole time. They were already prepared. They pushed the handles in front of them and found the right angle. Just as the big octopus was about to attack, 2 rows of dense light penetrated the sea and exploded on its body. Instantly, countless limbs fell off and a cloud of blood mist appeared on the crystal screen. In the image, countless tentacles and limbs fell out of the blood mist. Finally, with a bang, the octopus was completely penetrated. Its huge body scattered weakly. Then, a white shadow quickly swam over and gnawed on the remains of the octopus. It's quite fun. Xiaowa exhaled and moved the handle. 70% of the lights were hit by me. So to be precise, it was killed by me, Qin Hao said. It was his first time playing a naval battle, and it was under the water. It was quite refreshing. Let me try to. Zhou Wudao rubbed his hands excitedly like a child who had found toy. He wanted to seize Xiaowa's right to control the cannons. It's coming again. 60 degrees to the left, Qin Hao. Zheng Qingqi said. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. A dazzling stream of light penetrated the sea from the left side of the bow. Like a dense meteor, it shot at a huge sea wolf and blasted it into several pieces. Then, the strange fish crazily swam past and cleaned up the broken limbs. At the same time, Qi Xiao on the right side also opened fire and killed another sea monster. Not only them, but as the warship sailed, dense gunfire constantly flashed around the hull. Zheng De, Zheng Er, Zheng San, and the other 4 people were also doing their best to protect the warship. At present, the metal balls were completely useless, and even some of the metal balls hanging under the ship were eaten by sea monsters. Zheng Qingqi steered the rudder and tried his best to avoid the places where the sea monsters were concentrated. Qin Hao and the others controlled the cannons and constantly killed the approaching monsters. Everyone had a clear division of labor. This situation was very tense. No one knew how many monsters they had killed. Gradually, Xiaowa felt a little dizzy and felt that he was losing a lot of energy. Even the Yuan Shi in his Dantian was a little lacking. To activate the Yuan crystal cannon, part of the Yuan Shi was injected by the warriors, not just by using Yuan crystal stones. What was worse was that the strange fish were like ghosts, following Qin Hao and the others. They seemed to have tasted the sweetness and found that following Qin Hao's ship, they could eat a lot of delicious food. So, more and more strange fish gathered. If one looked from outside the ship, they would find that Qin Hao's warship was already full of strange fish. They were like a group of moss growing on the bottom of the ship. Moreover, they flew around and made a buzzing sound that was even more annoying and deeply affected one's mood. Zhou Wudao, it's your turn. Xiaowa took the initiative to retreat and left his seat. He fell down with a pale face. Tangung, take care of him, Zhou Wudao ordered. Tangung was already prepared. He opened his soul pot, and an incomparably soft light enveloped Xiaowa's body, helping him recover. Now it's our turn to compete. Zhou Wudao licked his lips at Qin Hao. Qin Hao directly ignored him. Your Highness, there seems to be a big thing coming from the port side. I have a strong sense of crisis and might not be able to deal with it. At that moment, Zhang Second's voice was transmitted through the sensor tube. His voice was trembling, and he sounded like he was about to cry. Zhang Qingqi's heart trembled. Zhang Second and the other four were all peak Yuan venerates and essence soul realm martialists. They had undergone the cruelest training of the Zhang family since they were young, and their individual abilities were extremely strong. This was the first time he had heard fear in Zhang Second's voice. Obviously, the thing that scared him had to be very terrifying. Don't be afraid. Guard your post well. Zhang Qingqi steered the rudder and suddenly made a sharp turn. He gave up on advancing and changed direction to face the port side. There were two turrets at the bow of the ship. Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao's soul power was extremely strong. With their cooperation, there was no sea beast they couldn't deal with in this insignificant internal sea, unless it was a beast arch. However, Zhang Qingqi's confidence crumbled the moment he changed direction. Endless fear spread in his heart, and he regretted it. Oh my God, what was that thing ahead? Through the crystal screen, Zhang Qingqi saw a giant beast that looked like an 8-clawed monster approaching them. Its speed and momentum were extremely frightening, as if an undersea storm was bombarding them. At first, he thought that it was another octopus monster. However, when the monster got closer, he realized that it wasn't. This monster was even bigger than their ship, and it wasn't waving its tentacles. It was a 9-headed snake. Even through the crystal screen, the murderous aura of the other party could be felt. Run! There was only one word in Zhang Qingqi's mind. That was what he did. He changed direction without hesitation and activated all the power, including the warship's backup power. The 9-headed snake monster was a rank 8 beast arch. It wasn't something they could fight against. It's too late. Attack! From afar, the 9-headed snake monster's roar seeped through the deck of the ship, causing everyone's scalp to go numb. Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao pressed the switch of the controller at almost the same time. The soul power in their bodies completely erupted. Their soul power combined with the spirit chi of the crystal turrets and bombarded the 9-headed snake monster at the same time. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Countless dense light beams shot out. Every light beam that penetrated the seawater caused a crazy undercurrent. The dense light beams bombarded the 9-headed snake monster's body one after another, causing a series of explosions. However, it roared crazily all the way and didn't seem to care at all. Moreover, it seemed that the crystal turrets couldn't hurt it. After the light beams exploded, they were swallowed by the seawater around its body. Boom! Finally, the 9-headed snake monster carried the cannon and crashed into the warship. At this moment, everyone's body tilted at the same time. Their minds were shaken, and the equipment in the cockpit fell to the ground. Sioga's body bounced up and crashed into the ceiling of the cabin before falling down heavily. So strong. Zhang Qingqi's mouth dripped with blood. He used all his strength to hold the rudder and control the warship's direction, trying to speed up and rush out. However, it didn't work. The terrifying snake monster crashed into the warship, its body entangled with the warship. The warship was completely out of control. Kacha! A shattering sound seemed to resound in everyone's heart. Your Highness, the engine room at the stern is cracked. Your Highness, the port turret was crushed by an external object. Your Highness, the starboard side is leaking. Your Highness, all kinds of hull damage were reported one after another from the sensor tube. However, what could Zhang Qingqi do? He could only smile bitterly. This warship was the ancestral ship of the Zhang family. It was also the sturdiest ship in the Empire of Zhang. It had all kinds of equipment. Zhang Qingqi even dared to pat his chest and proudly say that in the entire southern region, there was no other ship that could compare to it. But with just one hit, we have to abandon the ship. Zhang Qingqi was powerless, but he knew what to do. Abandon the ship, and people could live. Stay, and everyone would die. This was the only way. We don't know how many dangers there are ahead. You said that without a ship, we can't reach Emperor's Bay. Qin Hao said. They had just set foot on the god's path, and they hadn't even reached Emperor's Bay. Were they going to give up? Abandoning the ship meant that they were out. Living is better than dying. Maybe we are not destined to be disciples of the divine palace. Zheng Qingqi was certainly very willing, but what could he do? He could only blame his bad luck for attracting the attention of the nine-headed snake. White-haired old man, are you afraid of death? Zhou Wudao's eyes were sharp as he got up and took off his outer shirt. Zhou Wudao, are you crazy? Tan Geng's eyes were frightened. Naturally, he guessed what the other party wanted to do. An eighth-order beast emperor was already very terrifying. If it was on land, they could try to fight. However, underwater, this monster had an advantage, and the ability of warriors was weakened. Moreover, Tan Geng had never seen a nine-headed snake. This time they might die. Whoever falls behind is a coward. At some point, Qin Hao had also taken off his outer shirt. There was no need to say anything else. At this moment, the fighting spirit in their eyes was burning. They still had a battle to finish. In that case, they would end it with a nine-headed snake today. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two figures flashed out at the same time, and the cabin door opened. Two lunatics. Tan Geng's heart trembled. A level 7 Yuan Venerate and a level 2 Yuan Venerate had actually entered the sea to fight a level 8 sea monarch. Tan Geng had originally thought that Zhou Wudao was crazy enough, but Qin Hao seemed even crazier. After all, he was only a level 8 Yuan Venerate. This is an illness, Tan Geng said. Unfortunately, he couldn't cure it. Blurg, the skinny, fair child in the corner, vomited again. Education 123 Literature Network. Chapter 1357. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Zheng Qingqi didn't stop them when they left. He knew that only by fighting in the sea could they save the warship. He didn't have the ability to do that, so he could only pray that nothing happened to Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao. After they left, they went straight into the sea. For Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao, they couldn't back down from this battle. If they couldn't become disciples of the Divine Palace, how could Qin Hao destroy the Xianyuan family and make them pay for Xiaohan's torture? How could he return to Beijiang and see his father-in-law? Back then, Xiao Yi didn't hesitate to fall out with the entire Beijiang forces for them. Now, Daliao was besieged on all sides, like a sword hanging over its head. If war broke out at any time, the country would be destroyed. Zhou Wudao was the same, but not for his family, but for one person. That person was not himself, but Qin Hao. He entered the southern region, got the Divine Palace token, and was determined to become a 9-star great emperor within 10 years to wash away the shame of the Imperial Martial Arts Tournament. Today, he had to retreat before even seeing the Divine Palace and lose the qualification to enter. He absolutely wouldn't allow it. What's more, Qin Hao was right in front of him. He couldn't let him laugh at them. Their beliefs were extremely firm. At this moment, not to mention a sea emperor, even if there were corpses of hell in front of them, they would still give it a try. Men should live up to their passion. Kill. Countless ear-piercing screams echoed on the dark seabed. Demon shadows shuttled back and forth, gnawing on the corpses of warriors. The warriors' blood mixed with the seawater, and the scene was extremely terrifying and bloody. Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao surged their primordial qi and stared at the monster in front of them. The seawater couldn't soak their bodies. At this time, in front of them, there was a giant snake more than 100 feet long, with 9 heads and as thick as a dragon. The snake twisted its pitch-black scale body and tightly wrapped around the warship, dragging it into the sea at a crazy speed. Whether it was the strange fish or the other sea demons, they all fled in panic. Obviously, the giant 9-headed snake was the absolute king of this sea area, and no one could compete with it. Red flames surged, illuminating the space 100 meters around Qin Hao. Beside Zhou Wudao, countless soul crows surrounded him, making strange sounds. For the first time, the two of them fought side by side. However, in front of the giant 9-headed snake, the two top geniuses of the human world were as insignificant as dust. A column of flame rose vertically, climbing up dozens of feet like a giant flaming sword, slashing down at one of the snake heads. Countless soul crows continued to fuse together, growing larger and larger. Within the black fog, a huge soul crow appeared. It soared through the water like a circling pong. It opened its sharp claws and similarly attacked a snakehead. The nine-headed giant snake was exceptionally vigilant, its dark green eyes glowing. Actually, when Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao released their source spirits, it had already taken the initiative to launch an attack. Two snakeheads poked out violently and opened their bloody mouths, spraying out an incomparably majestic water column. The flaming sword slashed down, but it was annihilated by the water column. Before the giant crow's sharp claws could reach its target, its body was pierced through by another water column. Then, the two snakeheads swallowed Qin Hao and Zhou Wudao respectively. Go all out! Zhou Wudao roared with all his might as he retreated hastily to avoid the attack. The snakehead that attacked him forcefully created a hole in the warship, shattering the wooden planks. Actually, there was no need for Zhou Wudao to say anything. When the Red Lotus exploding flame blade was destroyed, Qin Hao had already activated the second dragon soul. The nine-headed giant snake's defense was extremely strong, and underwater was its battlefield, which was very advantageous for it. Without activating the second dragon soul, they had no chance of winning. Roar! The dragon soul was activated. Qin Hao's body quickly strengthened. His height, strength, and appearance all underwent earth-shattering changes. Along with a layer of dense dragon scales growing out, his right hand turned into a dragon claw as he punched the snakehead. Bang! A powerful sound exploded in the deep sea. With a head-on collision, Qin Hao's head tilted back as he was sent flying. The snakehead's attack was also stopped. It fell to the ground and crazily shook its head, as if this punch had made it a little dazed. However, it immediately recovered and seized the opportunity. Like a fierce snake coming out of its hole, it once again bit at Qin Hao's body that had lost control. At this time, Zhou Wudao activated the second dragon soul. Tao Tai appeared, bringing with it the pressure of an ancient fierce beast. Even though it was at the bottom of the sea, the pressure still existed. Ancient fierce beasts and ordinary fierce beasts were two completely different concepts. Ordinary fierce beasts were only a little stronger than wild beasts, and their wildness had not deteriorated by much. However, ancient fierce beasts were the real terror, and were on par with ancient giant dragons. A terrifying beast shadow descended behind Zhou Wudao. An ancient and desolate aura permeated the air. The nine-headed serpent couldn't help but tremble. The head that was attacking Qin Hao was also affected by the Tao Tai. It immediately stopped its attack. At this moment, the nine heads moved closer to one another. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page up. 18 dark green snake eyes stared at Zhou Wudao, and a cold human voice came out, soul of Tao Tai. Evil beast, Zhou Wudao roared. He stretched out his arms and extended his palms. As he moved, the gigantic beast shadow behind him opened its terrifying maw, akin to a bottomless black hole, wanting to devour everything in this world. Die! Roar! The Tao Tai roared, and a tyrannical devouring power shrouded the front, descending on the body of the nine-headed giant snake. Its body suddenly slid forward involuntarily. I'm an evil beast? Aren't you the same? The nine-headed giant snake replied. Then, another water column was shot forward into the Tao Ye's mouth. However, this time, it was completely useless. Not only did the water pillar destroy the primordial spirit, it even pulled the snake's head closer to the Tao Ye's mouth. In an instant, the nine-headed giant snake's dark green eyes showed surprise for the first time. It was clear that a snake head could not deal with the Tao Ye's soul, worthy of being an ancient fierce beast. Unfortunately, it's not a real beast soul, so it's useless against me. The nine-headed giant snake twisted its body, and another head attacked, shooting out a majestic water column. A martial artist's soul was an individual's talent, and it did not exist in reality. If the Zhou Wudao in front of it was not a human, but a wild beast, then it would be fine. Perhaps eating the Tao Ye's remnant soul would allow the nine-headed giant snake to evolve. With some disappointment, the largest snake head in the middle stuck out its disgusting tongue. Even if it could not devour the real Tao Tai, the human in front of it should be more delicious than other sea beasts. 2 water columns poured into the Tao Ye's mouth, but the 9-headed giant snake still greatly underestimated Zhou Wudao's ability. It was still unable to kill him, and even the second snake head began to slide into the Tao Ye's mouth. Ha! Killing an 8th-rank Sea Emperor, this prince is still very excited. Zhou Wudao shouted crazily and poured the soul energy in his body into the Tao Ye's body. After stepping into the Emperor realm, his control over his second soul had obviously improved greatly. Now, he was no longer in a difficult situation like when he fought Qin Hao. Now, he could control his second soul freely. Kill me? Let's see who will kill who. The 9-headed giant snake showed a rare anger. Another snake head attacked, and 3 water columns shot into the Tao Ye's mouth. Buzz! Suffering from the powerful impact, the Tao Tai slid a few steps back. Then, its beastly body steadied itself. Its golden eyes tightened, and an even more frenzied, devouring power enveloped it, forcibly withstanding the attacks of the 3 snake heads. However, at this moment, dense sweat began to slide down Zhou Wudao's face. Vaguely, he had a feeling that he was full. The Tao Ye's soul was his own body. Of course, he knew that he was about to reach his limit. Just 3 snake heads were enough to make him like this? Roar! Another snake head attacked, and from its bloody mouth, a 4th water column shot into the Tao Ye's mouth. 4 powerful water columns shot out side by side at the same time. The Tao Tai kept sliding back, and its limbs trembled, giving people the feeling that it could not stand steadily. At the same time, Zhou Wudao's feet also began to slide back. His face was already sweating like water, and his stomach felt like it was being pressed down by a huge mountain. The size of the mountain was constantly expanding, and it made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Gradually, blood trickled down from the corner of Zhou Wudao's mouth. His face suddenly turned pale, and his body that was trapped in the water began to sway. What was worse was that in the confrontation of a few breaths, regardless of whether it was his vitality or soul power, the rate of consumption was incomparably fast. It can't be like this. Zhou Wudao could not understand. He had not reached his limit yet. He had trained many times in the past, and he had his own records. If it was on land, he could obviously hold on longer. However, in the inner sea, the consumption of soul power was twice as much as the outside world. He could not hold on any longer. Nothing is impossible. After all, the underwater world is this emperor's world. The largest snakehead in the middle said malevolently. On the snakehead, there were horns. It flicked its tongue, and the snake body crazily expanded. An incomparably turbulent power was shot out from the 4 snakeheads, and the water column that was shot out actually became twice as thick. Zhou Wudao was already having a hard time holding on, and the sudden power made him collapse on the spot. Pung! The Tao Ye's origin soul exploded. Finally, it could not hold on any longer. The excessive consumption had drained Zhou Wudao's soul power, and he could no longer maintain his second soul. At the same time, the barrier that protected his body suddenly collapsed. The bone-chilling seawater swept over, and mixed with an incomparably fishy smell, poured into Zhou Wudao's mouth. The heavy water pressure at the bottom of the sea caused the blood in his body to flow backwards. He spat out a mouthful of royal blood, and his body collapsed powerlessly. So even a Tao Tai has a time when it is full. This is really ironic. Remember, this emperor's name is Jiaoying. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. The horned snakehead was incomparably excited. Just as Zhou Wudao collapsed, it attacked like lightning, while the other heads did not move. Clearly, this head was where its life was, and it wanted to personally taste the delicacy. Zhou Wudao's soul power was completely drained. He, who was floating with the waves, no longer had any strength to resist. He laughed miserably. At this moment, even if Jiaoying did not kill him, he would not be able to live. The water pressure at the bottom of the sea was enough to crush him into powder. His mind was very clear, and he was extremely dissatisfied. After all, when he left the ship, he had spoken such arrogant words. In the end, the Snake Emperor only used 4 heads to defeat him, and even mocked him. Even a Taudai had a time when it was full. However, the strange thing was that he, who should have been crushed to death by the water pressure, did not die. On the contrary, the seawater was no longer bone-chilling, and his body was still comfortably warm. "Go!" A voice rang in his ears. Qin Hao's huge body, which was shining with scales, had unknowingly appeared. His long hair danced in the wind, and the red lotus fire in his palm gathered into a barrier, enveloping Zhou Wudao. With a great force, he threw him into the hole that Qin Hao had created in the battleship. At this moment, Qin Hao's life snake head had arrived, and it bit down viciously on Qin Hao's body. The flaming gang qi that enveloped his body instantly collapsed, and a cloud of blood mist appeared at that location. This was the last scene that Zhou Wudao saw. The person who was bitten should have been him. However, the white-haired old man, who had once humiliated him, had actually saved him. Why did Qin Hao not watch him die? This way, there would be sufficient reason for him to perish. His body crashed into the hole in the battleship, and everything in front of him turned into darkness. Zhou Wudao was not clear about what happened after that. He only vaguely felt that he was supported by a pair of warm palms, and Tan Geng's voice rang in his ears. Creak! The extremely sharp snake teeth bit through the dragon's scales and pierced into Qin Hao's body. Pain engulfed his entire body, numbing his nerves. It had been too long, and Qin Hao had not tasted the feeling of being torn apart. However, if he did not save Zhou Wudao, that kid would definitely die. Logically speaking, Qin Hao could completely ignore the life and death of Zhou Wudao. However, when he saw the unwillingness in Zhou Wudao's eyes in the face of death, Qin Hao still saved him. That unwillingness was not because Zhou Wudao was afraid of death. On the contrary, it was because he could no longer spar with Qin Hao, and that was his regret. Unconvinced? I'll make you convinced sooner or later. Qin Hao gritted his teeth, enduring the pain that engulfed him, and looked towards the hole where Zhou Wudao had disappeared. At this moment, the 9-headed snakelet was also stunned. It did not expect that a human would give up his own life to save another human. Furthermore, its teeth hurt a little. Following that, it was enraged. Do you know the consequences of destroying this emperor's delicacy? The 9-headed snakelet roared. Do you know the consequences of biting me in your mouth? Qin Hao replied fearlessly. Boom! Extremely intense flames exploded violently. In the deep sea, the dazzling light seemed to illuminate the world. In the next instant, the 9-headed snakelet let out a shrill cry. It felt like it was being roasted. The terrifying heat passed through its mouth, burning its snake body, and attacked its brain. Its mind was in a mess. It did not even know what it had just eaten. Following that, it did the most humiliating action in its life and spat out Qin Hao. It let go of the battleship, twisted its body, and darted deeper into the sea. It knew that there was a spring at the bottom of the sea, and the water there was even colder. It had to drink a mouthful, as its stomach was about to be burned through. Try to run? How could Qin Hao let it run? The battleship was severely damaged, and it just so happened that it lacked an aquatic beast. The 9-headed snakelet was a mount that came to its doorstep. With it leading the way, even if they lost the battleship, they could roam the inland sea without any worries. They could play as they wished. The ferocious dragon claws firmly grasped the horns on the 9-headed snakelet's head. Qin Hao flipped over and mounted it. He clenched his left fist, gathering an extremely terrifying strength. His dragon power was pushed to the limit, and the indestructible samsara technique was activated. The demigod's fist smashed valiantly on the 9-headed snakelet's head. Boom! As though the entire inland sea was shaking. Qin Hao's arrogant roar sounded from the deep sea. Respect me as your master. Human, you're courting death. Bang. Another punch. Respect you as my master. Unless I die, bang. The third punch. Human, don't push your luck. I've already let you go. Please cherish your life. Bang, 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 bang. End of chapter. Chapter 1358. The punches rained down like a hammer, causing the Jiu-Ing to see stars. Blood spurted out of its mouth. The internal sea was vast, and there were countless water monsters. Some were stronger than it, but it had never been afraid of anyone. Today, it had encountered a lunatic who wanted to enslave it. This was something unimaginable in the past. It twisted its body and charged towards the bottom of the sea. The deeper it went, the greater the water pressure. The Jiu-Ing knew very well that the lunatic's Yuan Qi wouldn't last long. How could a mere Yuan venerate try to enslave it? As it charged, the other heads of the Jiu-Ing continued to spit out water pillars that blasted Qin Hao's back, shattering his scales and tearing his flesh apart. However, Qin Hao's punches didn't stop. Instead, they became more and more ferocious. He also knew that whoever showed weakness now would die faster. Unfortunately, the deeper it went, the stronger the water pressure. Qin Hao's punches started to weaken. He had no choice but to release the dog spirit and Ahe Huang. Qin Hao couldn't beat the nine-headed snake in terms of head count. Since that was the case, he decided to make the battle fair and release the dog spirit to bite it. Roar, roar, roar. The sudden appearance of the three beasts disrupted the Jiu-Ying's plans. Individually, it wasn't afraid of Qin Hao, Ahe, or the dog spirit. Even if the dog spirit became an emperor, it would become a dead dog in the water sooner or later. However, this group of despicable and shameless fellows were ganging up on it. It really couldn't stand it. Furthermore, it had been drained of energy by Zhou Wudao's Taotai spirit and was at the end of its tether. I will never admit defeat. The Jiu-Ing had really gone mad. Ahe and Ahe revealed their true forms. They had immense strength and stepped on its back. Their palms grabbed its snake heads and pinched them, causing it to suffocate. The dog spirit was like a mad dog that had rabies. It didn't care about its life like the human, trading injuries for injuries. It kept biting and tearing at the Jiu-Ing, almost biting off one of its snake heads. Even so, the nine-headed neonate still swam towards the deep sea without regard for anything else. Along the way, it was filled with endless blood and looked extremely miserable. Qin Hao felt dizzy and his vision blurred. His head felt like it was being clamped between two giant palms, squeezing his head until it was swollen. The strength of his fist became weaker and weaker, and the dragon's soul was about to dissipate. This snake was too wild and too difficult to tame. He took out the great void sword and injected what little Yuan Qi he had left into it. It spewed out a terrifying power of law. He grabbed the horn with his right hand and aimed at Jiu-Ying's left eye, stabbing the sword in. Puchi! As the sword light pierced through, the nine-headed snakelet let out a hoarse roar that could shatter the heavens and earth. It felt an incomparably terrifying, tearing force rushing into its brain. That force was crazily eroding everything about it, wanting to destroy its soul. This sword strike was enough to destroy it. One last time, respect me as your master. Qin Hao forced himself to maintain his willpower. The will of the emperor blasted into Jiu-Ying's mind along with the sword. His majestic voice continued to reverberate. His tone was as though a true god had descended, and he was the only one in this world. I submit. Jiu-Ying did not hesitate to reply. Its snake body twisted, and in a flash, it rose up to the surface of the sea like a dragon. Qin Hao smiled and let go of his hand. The willpower he had forced himself to fall unconscious, and his body slid down from Jiu-Ying's head. However, at this moment, one of Jiu-Ying's snake heads wrapped around Qin Hao tightly and brought him back to the surface of the sea. Pung! There was an explosion of water, and a 1,000-foot-long snake monster emerged. It had 9 terrifying heads, scaring the surrounding martial artists and causing them to flee frantically. The moment it came out of the sea, Jiu-Ying collapsed. There was a sword in its eye, and it was breathing instinctively. It no longer had the strength to move. At this moment, its entire body was covered in wounds. Its snake scales had fallen off, and one of its vice heads had been torn in half from the neck by the dog spirit. It was drooping to one side, and its blood had spread more than 100 meters into the sea. Even so, the other sea demons and strange fish were still frightened and did not dare to approach. The Emperor's might was hard to resist. In the endless inland sea, the battles continued. After 80,000 kilometers, all the advancing explorers were attacked. Strange water arrows shot into the sky, penetrating through the clouds as if they were eagles shooting down from the sky. The martial artists riding the sea beasts were surrounded by a large number of strange fish. Their mounts were instantly reduced to nothingness, and not even their bones were left. Of course, the people riding the mounts were also gone. Ship after ship was sunk. Wails, screams, and angry shouts resounded across the sea. It was like an epic battle had erupted. At this moment, the number of explorers was reduced by 30%. Before they reached Fallen Emperor Bay, they were buried at the bottom of the sea, becoming the dust of history. And this was the first round of challenges they encountered after obtaining the Divine Palace tokens. The sea was dyed red with blood. Countless broken shipboards floated, messy clothes, and floating corpses moved with the waves. The scene was nauseating. In a certain part of the sea, a huge sea chelan was advancing. On the back of the sea chelan was a figure. Most of the figures were injured, and their clothes were torn, revealing much of their white skin. She stood calmly, her messy hair swaying in the sea breeze. Her face, which was more delicate than a woman's, revealed a proud smile. And in this part of the sea, there were corpses everywhere. She was the only living person. Do you have a name? Qingji Han looked down at the sea chelan under her feet. Master, my name is Sea Tyrant, the sea chelan said. Han Qingji frowned, and her eyelashes fluttered. She shook her head and said, That's a bad name. From today onwards, you are called Xiaolon. Xiaolon? The sea chelan had an impulse to die, but it nodded honestly. Master, the name you gave me is really nice. It has a celestial aura. It makes me feel a level higher. Don't talk nonsense. Come with me, and you can become an emperor. Qingji Han's expression was calm as she looked at the sea around her. Now, there was no one alive. It was really tragic. Just now, when they were attacked by the sea monsters, Ning Tianxing's void warship was also shot down. In the chaos, she was separated from everyone. She did not know how Mo Xian and Ning Tianxing were doing. She was a little worried, but she quickly recovered. If Mo Xian and Ning Tianxing died, then they were not qualified to be with her. Trash was not worth her worry. Xiaolon, with your cultivation at the peak of the Emperor realm, are you the #1 overlord of the internal sea? Qingji Han asked. It was not easy to subdue this sea beast. She had used all her trump cards and was almost killed by it. If there was a stronger existence, she was not confident that she could reach Emperor Bay safely. If that was the case, she might have to turn back. No, Master. The inner sea is very large and is divided into countless sea regions. Every sea region has an emperor. I'm only the overlord of this sea region. As the sea chelan advanced, King Tong looked at the eastern sea region with fear in her eyes. There was a giant, 9-headed snake in the east that was not weaker than it. Is there no ocean emperor? Qingji Han continued to ask. She caught the key words from the sea chelan's words. If there was no ocean emperor, then there was no need to worry. The internal sea does not allow the ocean emperor to exist. I'm not too sure. According to rumors, once the ocean emperor is born, it will be destroyed by something terrifying. The sea chelan trembled. This was a dangerous problem that trapped it. It was about to become an emperor. With its strength, it could not safely leave the internal sea. Once it became an emperor, it would die. Therefore, in the past few decades, it did not dare to cultivate anymore. If Qingji Han had not promised to take it away, it would not have been so easily subdued by the other party. It might be the work of a powerhouse from the Divine Palace. Qingji Han guessed. The target of the conqueror was Emperor Bay and crossed the internal sea halfway. If there was an ocean emperor, no one could reach it. Master, further ahead, there will be storms and whirlpools. Moreover, it is impossible to fly. It is difficult for ordinary ships to cross. At that time, I will take you to the bottom of the sea. In less than 5 days, we will reach Emperor Bay. After reaching Emperor Bay, everything depends on you. Please be careful, the sea Chelan said. Emperor Bay was a forbidden place. It could not go ashore. Moreover, if it approached, even it would lose its strength. When I return from the Divine Palace, I will take you back to the East Continent. Qingji Han patted its head. Roar. The sea Chelan roared excitedly. Eastern Sea Region. A broken warship moved. Just a moment ago, the sea was filled with people. Now, it was the only ship left, moving forward alone. On the deck, Qin Hao was sprawled out. His entire body was bandaged with white cloth. Tan Geng was working hard to treat him. Zheng Qingqi, Ke-er, Yao, and everyone else were worried. Qin Hao was severely injured. When he was fished up, his flesh was a mess, covered in snake teeth marks. Much of his flesh was missing, and one of his arms was almost torn off. Zhou Wudao sat on a chair, his expression changing. His emotions were complicated. Not only had Qin Hao saved him, but he had also subdued Jiuying. Clearly, he had lost to the other party in this battle. Are you okay? Sayogwa held a medicine bottle and handed it to the dark man sitting on the ground with some fear. This man had long black hair and a sturdy body. However, there was a sword in his left eye that had almost pierced through his head. Fresh blood was flowing out, making him look exceptionally ferocious and terrifying. The timid female disciples of Knight Luo Palace did not even dare to look at him. Save my master first, Jiuying said coldly, rejecting Sayogwa's medicine. Qin Hao's sword was still in his eye, and the tearing force had already disappeared. However, the sword carried another force that was constantly absorbing Jiuying's beast power. He had no doubt that if Qin Hao died, he would die with him. Pavilion Master Qin's physical body is extremely strong. He will definitely be fine. I think you should take the medicine first. Otherwise, you will die before he wakes up. Tan Geng glanced at Jiuying. Bai Xiaodong pressed on the edge of the ship and vomited into the sea. Jiuying frowned. None of the people on the ship were normal. He grabbed Sayogwa's medicine bottle and threw it into his mouth. He even chewed the bottle and swallowed it. The elixir in the bottle was not a hemostatic medicine, but a Yuan Qi recovery elixir. Tan Geng had tried many times, but he could not stop Jiuying's blood. Therefore, he gave up and tried his best to save Jiuying's life. Only when Qin Hao woke up would there be a way to stop Jiuying's bleeding. As for the Great Void Sword, no one dared to pull it out. Even Jiuying himself did not dare to touch it. If you can't save my master, I will kill all of you. Jiuying threatened fiercely. Blood flowed from his left eye to half his face. His words made everyone on the ship shiver. If he did not stir up trouble and provoke us, he would not be like this. Zhou Wudao said bluntly. The snake monster was the one who started this, and he was in the right. Taotai, are you full again? Jiuying stood up. His shocking beast aura spread out, as though he could transform into a 9-headed snake and devour everyone. Zhou Wudao would be his first target. Stop arguing. My brother-in-law is awake. K's eyes were red. She had to take care of Xiao Han at the same time. For someone as young as her, it was really tiring. Pucci, guided by an invisible force, the sword in Jiuying's left eye flew up and disappeared into Qin Hao's interspatial ring. It was not lying. Qin Hao was indeed awake. In fact, he had woken up the moment he took a breath of air out at sea. The reason why he had pretended to be unconscious was to test Jiuying's reaction. After all, this snake monster was too fierce and ruthless. Chapter 1359. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations arriving at Fallen Emperor Bay. Master, Jiuying sincerely submits. Jiuying knelt before Qin Hao, ignoring the injury to his left eye. Do you have any requests? Qin Hao sat up and waved to everyone, indicating that he was fine. He looked at Jiuying. This snake was extremely ferocious and definitely wasn't afraid of him. Furthermore, he had already drawn his sword and removed Ling Tianyu's power. Jiao Ying should be able to feel it. Now that there was no threat and it was still willing to submit, it probably had a request. How would I dare to make any requests? Although I don't know what happened in the inland sea that attracted so many martialists, I beg Master to take me with you when you leave. Given your abilities, it will be a piece of cake. Jiao Ying looked at Qin Hao pleadingly. The reason it had abandoned its dignity wasn't because it was afraid of the other party. A mere Yuan Venerate wasn't qualified to order it around. However, Qin Hao wasn't an ordinary Yuan Venerate. During the battle at the bottom of the sea, the voice that had entered its mind had contained the might of a great emperor. Jiao Ying definitely wouldn't be mistaken. This meant that Qin Hao either had a great emperor's spirit protecting him or he was a great emperor recultivating. Submitting to a great emperor powerhouse wasn't an insult to Jiao Ying's status. Furthermore, it really needed Qin Hao's power to leave the cursed inland sea. Everyone looked at Jiao Ying curiously. It had actually submitted. Its tone and expression weren't fake. A sea monarch that was about to become a great emperor submitting to a Yuan Venerate was really unbelievable. Jiao Ying had even said to Qin Hao, "Given your abilities." At this moment, not only did everyone feel that Qin Hao was very strange. In their minds, Qin Hao was indeed very strong, but he clearly wasn't strong enough to make the sea monarch praise him. Combined with the previous performance in the bamboo grove, Palace Master Yi had repeatedly visited Feng City to ask for guidance. At that time, Feng City had just experienced a great battle and many things had to be done. Everyone had also been injured and recuperating, so Zheng Qingqi hadn't paid much attention. Now that they thought about it, it was very unusual. Knight Luo Palace had unconditionally obeyed Qin Hao's orders. The more they thought about it, the more strange it seemed. Could it be that Qin Hao was hiding something from everyone? No one spoke. Even though they felt it was strange, this was related to a person's secret, so they had no right to ask. "Why did I bring you away?" Qin Hao sensed the change in the atmosphere and smiled nonchalantly. He looked at Jiao Ying again. This huge snake was indeed not ordinary. It should have guessed his true identity, but it did not reveal it publicly. However, he needed to at least figure out the reason why he wanted to take it away from the inland sea. "Give me a reason." Jiao Ying gritted his teeth and said, "If I don't leave, I will die." Next, it told everyone some of the secrets of the inner sea. The ocean didn't tolerate the existence of ocean emperors. This was similar to what the Sea Qilin had told Qingji Han. However, Jiao Ying explained in more detail. "Take me away. The nine-headed neonate will forever serve you as my master. I beg for your permission." The nine-headed neonate kowtowed. "I see. Get up. There is no reason for me to reject your request." Qin Hao flicked his finger, and a ray of watery light entered the bloody hole in Jiao Ying's left eye. At this moment, Ten Gung's eyes widened. The bleeding had stopped. He looked at Qin Hao in disbelief. Qin Hao smiled faintly. Even an essence soul healer would find it difficult to heal wounds caused by the power of laws. Only tranquil water, which was of the same origin as Qin Hao, could do so. "Thank you, Master." Jiao Ying touched its eye. As a deep-sea demon, this injury was not important. It only wanted to leave the inland sea and obtain true freedom. Qin Hao stood up with Xiaogui's help. He took out some pills and swallowed them to recover his energy. "I really can't return the missing eye to you now. However, you have 9 heads. I don't think it will affect you much. Since the inland sea is your territory, you should know how to cross the sea to Fallen Emperor Bay, right?" Surprisingly, these grade 8 pills usually recovered a lot, but the effect today was very weak. Fallen Emperor Bay. Jiao Ying heard these 3 words and was a little nervous. Everyone is on the same side now. "We need your help," Zheng Qingqi said. "Master, don't go. It's very dangerous there." Jiao Ying ignored everyone. He only had eyes for Qin Hao. "I have to go. The warriors you saw crossing the sea was a sign released by the South Pole Divine Palace. Fallen Emperor Bay is the destination. We need to go there to receive new instructions and become disciples of the Divine Palace." Qin Hao did not hide the fact that the Divine Palace had opened. However, after Jiao Ying's interference, tens of thousands of people had died at the bottom of the sea. Clearly, the monsters in the sea were all Jiao Ying's subordinates. If that's the case, I'll personally bring Master there. However, I won't be able to go ashore. Everything will depend on Master, Jiao Ying said helplessly. From the bottom of his heart, he did not want Qin Hao to go to Fallen Emperor Bay. Now that he had submitted, he could not disobey his orders. All right, rest for 2 days and recover your strength. If you need anything, you can ask Second Zheng. Qin Hao pointed to a Zheng tribe youth beside him, after which he returned to the cabin with Xiaogua. The battle just now was intense, and he was afraid that Xiaohan would be affected. Senior, do you have any orders? After Qin Hao left, the atmosphere immediately changed. The people who remained on the deck were trembling. Second Zheng lowered his head and spoke in a trembling voice. No. Jiao Ying left with a dark face. Phew. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Facing a sea emperor who was about to become emperor, it was difficult to breathe. With Senior Jiao Ying leading the way, no matter how big the trouble is, I don't have to worry about it. Zheng Qinshi sat down beside Zhou Wudao as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. The most terrifying serpent in the internal sea had been subdued by Qin Hao. Whatever strange fish or sea monsters, they were like ants to him. They would never dare to destroy the battleship again. He felt that he was very wise. Qin Hao was indeed a god of fortune. With him around, there was no problem that could not be solved. Zhou Wudao lay on the chair. He had been seriously injured. He looked strangely at Jiao Ying, who was meditating, and then sighed deeply. In the vast inland sea, a giant 9-headed snake that was 100 zhang long moved forward. Qin Hao and the rest sat on Jiao Ying's back and moved forward smoothly. The battleship was severely damaged, which affected its speed. It was not as fast as Jiao Ying's speed. Moreover, there would be storms in the inland sea soon. With the battleship's level of damage, it was impossible for them to pass through the storm zone. According to Jiao Ying, storms were cyclical. Every 7 days, they would occur. There were also undercurrents and water monsters at the bottom of the sea. With the ability of a martial artist, if they tried to pass through forcefully, they would most likely die. However, Jiao Ying had submitted to Qin Hao. Storms and water monsters were not a problem. It only needed to dive to the bottom of the sea and pass through the storm zone easily. There was no need to wait for 7 days. This effectively shortened the time for the group and the other explorers, allowing them to reach Fallen Arch Bay faster. We will arrive in 1 day. Master, please don't forget our agreement. Jiao Ying swam on the surface of the sea. Its 9 snake heads raised to the sky and emitted a strong bestial aura. No creature dared to approach it. Even if you forget, I won't forget. I can't bear to leave you behind, Qin Hao joked. These days, he had chatted with Jiao Ying a lot. Both sides had laid all their cards on the table. There were no more secrets to speak of. Qin Hao revealed his true identity. At that moment, Jiao Ying was extremely shocked. It was completely convinced. At the same time, the Jiao Ying surprised Qin Hao as well. It wasn't an emperor, but a great emperor. Fearing the curse of the inner sea, the Jiao Ying had sealed a portion of its cultivation in the other snakeheads. If the seal was broken, it would be an 8th-order emperor who could trigger the tribulation of Tao and enter the great emperor realm. Clearly, Jiao Ying was much smarter than the sea Qilin. The sea Qilin did not dare to cultivate, but Jiao Ying did not stop cultivating. It led Qin Hao and the rest through the storm zone. After another day, they finally arrived at the number 1 forbidden land in the southern region. It was the place where Ning Sangsong was buried, the place where Li Wanji was traumatized. Fallen Arch Bay. Jiao Tian Divine Emperor. Chapter 1360. Translator. Nioibo, Studio Editor. Nioibo, Studio The East Continent Emperor and East Continent Princess Fallen Emperor Bay was huge. Looking down from above, it was like a crescent moon. The water of the inner sea came from here. Qin Hao and his group came ashore somewhere. Looking around, there was no one on the ground. They were obviously the first batch to arrive. The other candidates were still on their way. Zhu Ying begged Qin Hao again and again to leave behind a snake tooth before returning to the inner sea. It's completely different from what Senior Li said. Zheng Qingqi squatted on the shore and scooped up the river with his hand. He put his wet hand under his nose and smelled it. There was no smell of blood. This proved that Fallen Emperor Bay was not a blood river. Moreover, its water looked surprisingly clear. It was many times cleaner than the foamy water of the inner sea. Often, the surface is an illusion. What you can't see is the most dangerous. Qin Hao did not know the reason. He only knew that Li Wanji would not lie. Big brother, what should we do next? Xiaowu looked around. The air was terrifyingly silent. Hundreds of thousands of candidates had disappeared. It was as if they were the only ones left in the world. Qin Hao took out the Divine Palace token. It was calm as usual and did not give any instructions. He put it away helplessly and thought, with Zhu Ying's help, perhaps we arrived too early and the people of the Divine Palace are not ready yet. Looks like we have to wait a few days, Zheng Qingqi agreed. This was his first time participating. His family did not record the assessment process. For thousands of years, no one had passed the Divine Palace's assessment completely. There was no way to verify this. What Zheng Qingqi knew was only limited to the monsters of the inner sea. K. Yao, stay here and guard Han. Brother Qingqi, you take Zhengde and the others to the east. Zhou Wudao, Tangung, and I will go to the west. Before the other candidates arrive, we should familiarize ourselves with the terrain. Seeming to notice Zheng Qingqi's nervousness, Qin Hao added, don't worry. Since the Divine Palace has listed this place as an assessment, there will be no big trouble. If you encounter any danger, remember not to fight. Come back immediately. Okay. Zheng Qingqi mustered up his courage and nodded. In fact, he wanted to act with Qin Hao because he felt safe. However, Zhou Wudao had always been an unstable factor. Among the people present, only Qin Hao could control him, so there was nothing wrong with this allocation. Brother Dog, Ahei Huang, you guys stay behind. Gua Di, Zhou Wudao, Tangun, you guys follow me. Qin Hao walked towards the west without summoning his primordial wings. The moment he stepped onto the shore, he felt that the vital qi in his body had completely disappeared. Fallen Emperor Bei couldn't use his origin energy and couldn't even communicate with his source spirit, which was the same as what Li Wanji said. Currently, he was like a body-tempering stage martial artist who had just stepped into the martial Dao. Let's go. Zheng Qingqi waved his hand and led his 5 subordinates to the east. Qin Hao was right. It was very advantageous to figure out the terrain before the other signs came. One of the 2 groups headed east while the other headed west. Even though they couldn't fly, they were still Yuan Venerate powerhouses, so their running speed was still astonishing. As Qin Hao ran, he observed his surroundings and memorized some of the special terrain. Not long after everyone arrived, Qingji Han also stepped onto the shore in the west. Master, be careful. Little Blue will wait for you in the inner sea. The sea Qilin let out a beastly roar and dived into the sea. At that moment, a sense of danger flashed through its mind. It looked towards the east from the bottom of the sea and sensed a familiar scent. It's the scent of Jiuing. Why is it here too? The sea Qilin pondered. However, what Jiuing wanted to do had nothing to do with it. Both parties had always minded their own business, so it wouldn't take the initiative to ask. This is the #1 forbidden area of the southern region, Fallen Emperor Bay. Qingji Han stepped onto the grass on the shore and stretched her back, her chest puffing out. She took in a few breaths of fresh air. Her impression of Fallen Emperor Bay wasn't bad. It didn't have the fishy smell of the inner sea, and the air was fresh and natural. It didn't seem like a dangerous place. Seems like it's not challenging at all. There isn't even a shadow. Boring. Qingji Han walked slowly. She was separated from Mo Xian and Ning Tianxing's group. She didn't know if those people were dead or alive. She rode the sea Qilin and came here on water. Until now, she hadn't seen anyone. This meant that the first person to step onto the destination was her. This fully demonstrated her ability. Celestial Palace's sign? She didn't even have an opponent. Qing Jihan's lips curled into a smile. She was very disappointed. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have come to participate in the sign. Legends were legends after all. However, the 100% mortality rate of Celestial Palace was probably going to be broken by her. That's not right. Several breaths quickly approached from the east. Qing Jihan's expression changed slightly. There were actually people. Could it be that she wasn't the first one to come ashore? That was impossible. She had enslaved the Sea Qilin. With the Sea Qilin's speed, she had forcefully passed through the storm area. How could she be surpassed by someone else? Qing Jihan, who was still proud of herself a moment ago, now suffered a blow. Her agile body leaped and stepped on a giant tree. The dense leaves concealed her figure. She held her breath and wanted to see from the shadows who had surpassed her. Not long after, he saw 4 figures quickly rushing over. The person in the lead was tall and straight. He had an extraordinary aura. Just by looking at his face, one could tell that this person was extremely reserved. After a glance, Qing Jihan smelled danger from Qin Hao. This surprised her. In the vast world, except for that crazy woman and the sunset battle god of sunset plentiful, no one had ever given her such a feeling. But the bigger surprise was still to come. Qing Jihan actually saw Zhou Wudao, the second prince of the great Zhou Empire of the East Continent. This was not the point. The point was that Zhou Wudao was following behind the white-haired warrior. This showed a big problem. In the East Continent, the order of one's position determined one's status. For example, in a sect, the leader must be the sect leader, followed by the elders. In the empire, the leader must be the 9-star great emperor. What did this mean? Zhou Wudao had been subdued? Qing Jihan found it unbelievable. Although the great Zhou Empire's national strength was far inferior to East Qin, it was still slightly superior to the Moro Empire. In fact, without the support of Empress Ling Xian, the Moro Empire might not be a match for the great Zhou Empire. And Zhou Wudao was an extremely proud person. His talent was not inferior to Mo Xian's. He was one of the best in the entire East Continent. He was actually obediently following behind someone else. Who was this white-haired martial artist? Let's not go too far. I don't know if you have a feeling of hunger. Zhou Wudao said, his hand secretly pressing his stomach. Martial artists cultivated and fed on the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. At his level, an Emperor Realm cultivator would not be affected even if he did not eat for half a year. Usually when he drank and ate, it was just to taste the delicious food, absolutely not to eat until he was full. The strange thing was that Zhou Wudao felt hungry not long after he set foot in Fallen Emperor Bay. As he ran, the hunger grew stronger. You don't say, I'm hungry too. Rumble. A thunderous sound came from Siogua's stomach. He smiled embarrassedly. Tan Geng leisurely took out the dried meat from his storage ring. The dried meat had been stored for many years. He remembered that he had put it in when he was at the Yuan Gathering Realm. Now that he was at the peak of the Yuan Venerate Realm, he had almost forgotten about it. He thought that he might not be able to use it in this lifetime. In the end, delicious. Tan Geng chewed. Brother, give me a bite. Siogu stretched out his hand and swallowed. It's fun to share good things with others. This meat must have been stored for many years. I don't want it to spoil. Let me help you with it. Zhou Wudao grinned. As a prince of the great Zhou Empire, he could not keep such vulgar things on him. The people behind him were making a racket. They were arguing over a few pieces of jerky, but Qin Hao didn't react. His eyes flashed, and he looked sharply at a big tree on the coast. He stared at it closely, as if he had discovered something. What a formidable fellow. Qing Jihan held her breath. She did not need a secret technique to conceal her aura. After all, she did not have any aura at the moment because her Yuan Qi could not spread out. On the way here, the Sea Qilin had already told her that Yuan Qi could not be used or summoned in Fallen Emperor Bay. What's wrong? Zhou Wudao finally snatched a piece from Tan Geng's hand and threw it into his mouth. As he chewed, he followed Qin Hao's gaze and looked at the tree. Then he pretended to bend down to pick up a stone and threw it over. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Qin Hao pulled Zhou Wudao's arm first and shook his head at him. His eyes were clearly saying that there was someone there. Zhou Wudao shrugged. He understood what Qin Hao meant and threw the stone indifferently. Let's go back. Qin Hao gave everyone a look. Everyone understood and went back the way they came. Actually, there was not much to investigate. Apart from the side of Fallen Emperor Bay that was close to the sea, the other three sides were surrounded by mountains. Qin Hao did not feel at ease going to places that were too far away because he was worried about Xiao Han. On the other hand, the nearby areas were all flat land, and there was nothing suspicious. What was different was that he had discovered other omens on this trip. Interesting. Watching the four leave, Qingji Han stood on the tree and sneered. Zhou Wudao actually had a day when he was under someone else. Originally, she thought that even if Zhou Wudao was under someone else, that person would only be her. She did not expect that he would be under a white-haired youth. That was good as well. This way there would be some fun. Otherwise, if there was no one around, Han Qingji would feel lonely. Then, from this moment onwards, she was no longer lonely. Lightly jumping down, she chased in Qin Hao's direction and cautiously followed. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1361. Qingji Han did not know who Qin Hao was. She was just a little curious. Moreover, that gaze just now gave her a strange feeling. She seemed to have seen it somewhere before, but she could not remember where. Why don't you expose them? Zhou Wudao asked as he walked. After killing the other signs, there would be fewer competitors for the Divine Palace's disciple position. The enemy is in the dark, and we are in the light. How many people are hiding in the trees? What about their strength? I don't know. What if we are not their match? Qin Hao asked. Fallen Emperor Bei's terrain was special. Yuan Qi and Primordial Spirit could not be used. Once they fought, it was a competition of individual combat skills and stamina. If the enemy had the advantage in numbers, the 4 of them would be in a passive position. Zhou Wudao revealed a pondering expression. He really couldn't understand Qin Hao. When they returned to their original spot, everything was normal. Zheng Qingqi and the others had not arrived yet. Qin Hao and the others found a cave nearby and settled down. They let K, and Yi Yao accompany Xiao Han in the cave. The group of men guarded the cave entrance. When it was close to evening, Zheng Qingqi brought the others back. What did you find? There was a bonfire at the entrance of the cave. A cooked boar was skewered on the rack. Everyone sat in a circle. Qin Hao tore off the meat from the boar's back and handed it to Zheng Qingqi. There are many ruins. Zheng Qingqi took it and took a bite. After running for an entire day, he had used up a lot of energy. From here to the east, we found 3 collapsed buildings. As we were not sure if there was any danger, we did not dare to take a closer look. However, we remembered all the locations. Second Zheng continued. Ruins? Qin Hao thought. Fallen Emperor Bei was once inhabited? What about you? Zheng Qingqi did not know if anyone had lived in the ruins before. We saw the other signs. Zhou Wudao crossed his arms behind his head and lay down lazily. He wanted to attack, but Qin Hao stopped him. This surprised Zheng Qingqi. He said seriously, it seems that the signs selected by the Divine Palace are also very strong. In terms of speed, they are not inferior to us. It was not easy to successfully break through the sea demon's encirclement. To be able to reach Fallen Emperor Bei at the same time as them showed that the other party was not ordinary. After all, they had Jiu Ying's help along the way. How are they? Qin Hao looked at Xiaogua, who had walked out of the cave. They're all in good condition. They're praising your cooking skills. Xiaogua was smiling. The meat, roasted by Qin Hao's work. This Fallen Emperor Bei can't use Yuan, Qi, and Source Spirit. Once there's a conflict, those with more people will have a large advantage. Zheng Qingqi was full. He took out a handkerchief and wiped his mouth. Through the night, he looked to the west. Qin Hao had discovered some suspicious people in the west, so he had to be vigilant. The Divine Palace did not give any new instructions, so they could only wait. Maybe when there were more signs, they would start the next round of screening. The night was as dark as ink. Although the air was silent, they were in the most dangerous place in the southern mountain range. No one let down their guard. They all slept lightly. At this time, not far from their camp, a pair of eyes were secretly watching. Rumble. Her stomach made a dissatisfied sound. Qingji Han, who was curled up in the grass, rubbed her stomach. Looking at the flickering bonfire in the distance, she swallowed a mouthful of pork chops that had been torn to the bone. 7 days in a row, nothing unusual happened. Even the signs in the west did not come to disturb them. Qin Hao and the others sent people out to scout every day. The people who stayed behind were responsible for catching small wild beasts. No one knew what kind of test the Divine Palace would use next. Just the problem of food and clothing was enough to keep them busy. They worried about food every day. Due to the safety of the environment, Zheng De and the others gradually became bolder. They explored a wider area. Starting from the 5th day, they took some roasted meat and went on the road. They did not return to the cave until it was dark. During this time, the small teams they sent out found more ruins. However, they had not stepped in to observe carefully. Other than that, when it was late at night, the people who stayed behind at the cave would faintly hear a gurgling sound. This was very strange. Every time this sound sounded, it gave people a feeling of numbness. 7 days later, on the shore of Fallen Emperor Bay, people with signs came ashore one after another. Some are swollen and pale from being soaked in seawater. Some are missing arms and legs. There are also people who had fainted and floated over. Although they were all very miserable, they had made it to their destination alive. Gradually, more and more people began to arrive. Half a month later, the number of warriors on the shore of Fallen Emperor Bay reached a terrifying level. It was as lively as a small town. There were no less than 10,000 people. Of course, from the total number of warriors who had set out from the southern mountain range, less than 1 in 10 would survive to reach Fallen Emperor Bay. The number was still decreasing. Even so, 10,000 people gathered together. The scale was not small. When there were more people, friction and conflicts were unavoidable. One of the most prominent problems was the problem of food. What really made Qing Jihan's heart palpitate was Qin Hao's movement. She seemed to have seen that movement before, but her impression was very vague. What a strange guy. Qing Jihan went around the cave entrance and silently chased after him. She was more and more curious about Qin Hao. His actions showed signs of familiarity, but she still couldn't remember why. 5 miles away from the cave camp, there was a place surrounded by thorns that isolated the weeds and chaos. This place was very similar to Fallen Emperor Bay. The air was filled with the fragrance of herbs. It was light but intoxicating. Qin Hao came to the herb garden. In this thorny forest, he opened up a small herb garden and planted many strange flowers and plants. More than half of the flowers and plants had plump leaves that contained large amounts of water. It was as if water would flow out from the plump leaves with a light pinch. From afar, this herb garden was full of green and filled with endless vitality. Qin Hao sat in the herb garden and rested for a while. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The blue sky was vast and endless. Under the blue sky, people seemed small and insignificant. His eyes showed fatigue. He didn't know how long this kind of life would last, but he really couldn't hold on much longer. Maybe I should really move away from here. Shaking his head and smiling, Qin Hao smelled the familiar fragrance of the flowers. His depressed mood was much better, and he was no longer so tired. He casually broke a sharp thorn and pierced it into his thumb. Immediately, blood flowed out from the wound. Qin Hao used his left hand to open the soil. At the roots of each herb, he dripped a drop of blood and sealed the soil. Although the herb garden wasn't big, when the drops of blood fell into the soil and nourished the herbs, it consumed Qin Hao's fate energy. This was also the reason why his complexion was getting worse and worse. The water that everyone drank was watered with his blood. The water in Fallen Emperor Bay was very clear, but it was very unpleasant to drink. Moreover, Qin Hao knew that it used to be a river of blood, and he didn't know how many corpses were buried at the bottom of the river. He had also studied the water in private. With Dinda's ability, he didn't discover any poison. However, this didn't mean that the water in Fallen Emperor Bay was harmless. This was because there were too many poisons in the world that wouldn't take effect in a short period of time. Qin Hao was immune to poison. He wasn't afraid of himself, but he was afraid that Xiao Han, Ke and the rest would be poisoned. Therefore, it was better to nourish the water himself. Although he couldn't use his soul, the tranquil water had already merged with Qin Hao's soul. He was the source of water. In his blood, there was a strong effect of the tranquil water. The plants nourished by his blood contained the cleanest water in the world.